And please, can I check that the live stream has started? Democratic Services? We are live on custom streaming. Thank you.
Chairman, I can confirm we're live.
Thank you very much. I will go to each member of the council to confirm that they can hear and be heard. This is a legal requirement for me to do so. Please verbally confirm that you are able to hear me, and I will confirm in response that I can hear you. Councillor Graham Andrews.
Morning, Chairman. Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
And I can see and hear you too. Thank you. Councillor Paul Andrews.
Good morning, Chairman. I can hear and see you.
Thank you. I can hear and see you too. Councillor Polly Andrews.
Good morning, Chairman. I can see and hear you.
I can see and hear you too. Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Councillor Jenny Bartlett.
Good morning, Chairman. Yes, I can see and hear you.
I can see and hear you too. Thank you. Councillor Chris Bartram.
Yes, I can see and hear you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. I can see and hear you too. Councillor Christy Bilderson.
Good morning. I can hear and see you, Chair.
I can see and hear you too. Thank you. Councillor Ellie Chance. Councillor Paul.
Morning, Chair. I can hear and see you.
Thank you, Councillor Chance. I can see and hear you too. Councillor Pauline Crockett.
Good morning, Chair. Thank you. I can see and hear you.
See and hear you too. Councillor Gemma Davis.
Morning. I can see and hear you, Chair.
I can see and hear you too. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Barry Durkin.
Good morning, Chairman. I can see and hear you.
Thank you. I can see and hear you too. Councillor Tony Fagan.
Good morning, Chair. I can see and hear you.
I can see and hear you too. Thank you. Councillor Elizabeth Foxton.
Good morning, Chair. I can see and hear you.
I can see and hear you too. Thank you. Councillor Carol Gandy.
Good morning, Chair. I can see and hear you.
Hear you too. Thank you. Councillor Kima Guthrie.
Good morning, Chairman. I can see and hear you.
Good morning to you too, and I can see and hear you as well. Councillor John Hardwick.
Good morning, Chairman. I can see and hear you clearly.
Good morning, Councillor. I can see and hear you too. Councillor John Harrington.
Good morning, Chairman. I can see and hear you. Thank you.
I can see and hear you too. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Liz Harvey. Councillor Liz Harvey.
Morning, Chair. I can see and hear you.
Thank you. I can see and hear you too. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Jenny Hewitt.
Good morning, Chair. I can see and hear you.
I can see and hear you too. Thank you. Councillor Kath Hay.
Morning, Chair. I can see and hear you.
I can see and hear you too. Thank you. Councillor David Hitchener.
Good morning, Chair. I can see and hear you. Thank you.
Good morning, Leader. I can see and hear you too. Councillor Philip Howells.
Morning, Chairman. I can see and hear you. Thank you.
I can see and hear you too. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Helen Ianson.
Good morning, Chairman. I can see and I can hear you.
I can see and hear you too. Good morning to you. Councillor Terry James.
Morning, Chairman. I can see and hear you clearly.
I can see and hear you clearly as well. Thank you. Councillor Peter Ginman.
Good morning, Chairman. I can see and hear you.
You are loud and clear and very visible. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Tony Johnson.
Good morning, Chair. I can see and hear you.
I can see and hear you too. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Graham Jones.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. I can see and hear you.
I can see and hear you too. Thank you. Good morning to you. Councillor Mike Jones.
Good morning, Chairman. I can see and hear you.
Good morning to you, and I can see and hear you as well. Councillor Jim Kenyon. Councillor Jim Kenyon. You were here earlier on. Councillor Jim Kenyon.
Loud and clear.
Thank you. I can see and hear you now as well. Thank you. Councillor Jonathan Lester.
Thank you, Chairman. I can see and hear you.
I can see and hear you too. Thank you. Good morning to you. Councillor Trish Marsh. Being there for a moment. Councillor Bob Matthews.
Good morning, Chairman. I can see and hear you.
I can see and hear you too. Thank you very much. Councillor Mark Wilmore.
Good morning, Chair. I can see and hear you.
Good morning to you, and I can see and hear you as well. Councillor Jeremy Milne.
Good morning, Chair. I can see and hear you.
I can see and hear you too, and good morning to you. Councillor Felicity Norman.
Good morning, Chair. I can see and hear you.
I can see and hear you too, and good morning to you. Councillor Roger Phillips.
Good morning, Chairman. I can see and hear you.
I can see and hear you too, Councillor. Good morning to you. Councillor Tim Price.
Morning, Chairman. I can see and hear you.
I can see and hear you too, and good morning. Councillor Paul Rowe.
Morning, Chair. Morning, colleagues. I can hear and see you.
I can hear and see you as well. Thank you, and good morning to you. Councillor Alan Selden.
Clearly with sound and vision. Good morning, Chairman.
Good morning to you as well, and I can see and hear you as well. Councillor Nigel Shaw, I think, is not here. Councillor Lewis Stark.
Good morning, everyone. I can hear and see you, Chair.
Thank you. See and hear you too, and good morning to you. Councillor John Stone.
Good morning, Chairman. I can hear and see you.
I can hear and see you too, and good morning to you. Councillor David Summers.
Good morning, all. I can hear and see.
We can hear and see you as well, and good morning to you. Councillor Alyssa Swinglehurst.
Good morning, Chair. I can hear and see you.
I can see and hear you too, and good morning to you. Councillor Paul Simons.
Morning, all. Yes, I can see and hear you. Thank you, Chairman.
I can see and hear you very well. Good morning to you. Councillor Kevin Tillett.
Good morning, Chair. I can hear and see you. Thank you.
I can hear and see you too, and good morning to you. Councillor Diana Toynbee.
Good morning. Yes, I can hear you and see you. Thank you.
I can hear and see you too, and good morning to you. Councillor Ange Tyler.
Good morning, Chair. I can see and hear you. Thank you.
See and hear you too. Good morning to you. Councillor Yolandi Watson.
Good morning, Chair. I can hear you and see you. Thank you.
I can see and hear you too, and good morning to you. Councillor William Wilding.
Morning, Chair. Yes, thank you. I can hear and see.
I can hear and see you too, and good morning to you, Councillor. I believe we have now Councillor Trish Marsh.
Yes, I can hear and see you. Thank you, Chairman.
But I can hear and see you too. Thank you very much indeed. And Councillor Bolter.
Good morning, Chair. I can hear and see you.
I can hear and see you too. Good morning to you. Good morning to you all. Right. I think there are no more people waiting to be admitted now, are there? Democratic Services. Good to go. Thank you. And again, I'd like to welcome everyone to today's virtual meeting. The Council is video and audio streaming this meeting live on the internet and making an official recording. The recording forms part of the public record of the meeting. And please note that it is a legal requirement that every member attending virtual meetings is able to hear and, where practicable, see and be heard, and where practicable, be seen by the other members in attendance and the public watching. So I ask that you please have your audio switched on, and where you are able to do so, you also have your video enabled. For virtual meetings, there are a number of additional points for members of the Council and officers to be aware of. At the start of the meeting, all members will be on mute and will remain so throughout the meeting, but members will have the ability to unmute their microphones. Where a member has raised their virtual hand, I will call on you to unmute your microphone and speak. In a departure from normal practice and following discussions with group leaders, members will have control of their microphones during this meeting. Please can I ask that members desist from interrupting the meeting. Please only speak when I call upon you to do so, and I will ensure that all members who wish to speak are able to speak, should they seek to do so. If interruptions continue after I have given clear indications for it to stop, I will instruct Democratic Services to operate the microphones. I stress, I do not wish to pursue that option. So I ask that members help me to conduct this meeting in the best of order. If you have a point of order, please wait until a member has finished speaking before unmuting your microphone and explaining how standing orders have been breached. For this meeting, I recognize the strength of concern members will be feeling as we discuss the very distressing matter before us. I ask that members use their usual good discipline in offering their views on this matter. Where members exceed the time limit for speeches, I will allow leeway, given the subject under consideration. Please try to be succinct and try to avoid repeating points already made. Thank you. When you wish to speak, please use the raise hand button. If you have updated your Zoom account, this will appear under the reactions button at the bottom of your screen. If you have not updated your account, the raise hand icon will be against your name in the participants list, which should be on the right of your screens. I will invite those members who have raised their hands to speak. Private chat has been enabled for this meeting. Please can members ensure that the facility is only used to communicate with me as the chairman via Mr. Coleman, and please also use the private chat facility to explain that you will be leaving the meeting if you have not already provided notice. Voting will be undertaken electronically using the voting software within the virtual meeting platform. In the event that electronic voting is not possible to use, or there is a technical failure, I will ask each member by means of a roll call to indicate if they are for, against, or are abstaining. I wish to remind members that following requests from members of the public and a number of councillors, the council will publish the voting choices made by members. Voting choices will be published on the council's website immediately after the meeting, and the record of how members voted will be set out in an appendix to the minutes of this meeting, which will be published 5 working days after the meeting. Alternatively, members may wish, as is their right to do, to call for a named vote. At least 8 members will need to support that proposal for it to be carried, and I will ask for the names of 8 individual members to request the recorded vote, which will be recorded in the minutes. I now introduce the monitoring officer to provide some legal advice to the meeting. And I believe we have Kate Charlton, our monitoring officer, who will provide the following legal advice.
Good morning. Good morning, and thank you, Chair. Before we move to the meeting, please can I remind all in attendance that the judgments under discussion at today's meeting, the anonymity of the children and members of the family is strictly preserved. All persons must ensure that this condition is strictly complied with. If you know of this family, this information must stay private with you. Failure to do so might result in contempt of court. This applies to all the items on the agenda and the business to be discussed today. In addition, I remind members that we are not here to examine the actions of individuals. The business of this meeting today is to receive a report on the issues raised by the recent judgment and what actions are being proposed by the Council in response. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Good advice. In addition to the statutory officers, we will also have additional officers on hand to assist with technical queries that members may have during the debate. We have Kath Knowles, Interim Director of Children's Services, Andy Gill, Assistant Director of Children's Safeguarding, Quality and Improvement, Tess Burgess, Solicitor, Kim Gaffey, Solicitor, Adam Mohammed, Solicitor. And please can I also welcome Paul Walker, incoming Chief Executive, to the meeting. Thank you. Apologies for absence. I have received apologies from Councillor Bowes and Shaw. Are there any other apologies? No other apologies? And the next item is declarations of interest. And we are here to receive any declarations of interest by members in respect of items on this agenda. If any member does need to leave the meeting while an item is discussed, they will be placed in the virtual waiting room until that item has been concluded. Members who have declared an interest and withdrawn from the meeting will be readmitted once the item has been concluded. Do any members have any interests to declare? None declared. Thank you very much. I now come to item 3, questions from members of the public. There have been 7 questions submitted under this item. The questions and responses have been published as a supplement. And we have supplementary questions which must relate to the original question raised and must not take the form of a statement. Supplementary questions are limited to 1 minute in length. If the question is likely to exceed 1 minute or it takes the form of a statement, the virtual participant's microphone will be placed on mute and will be requested that the question is put immediately. The first supplementary question, it is anonymous. Who will be undertaking the independent review? What are their competencies? And will affected parties be advised of any errors, mistakes, or poor practices, as well as their rights, without having to contact Herefordshire Social Services, Herefordshire Council first? Cabinet Member for Children and Families, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the question. I think it's probably sensible if we advise you in writing about this. This will be the responsibility of the Department of Education, and I believe it's still being worked through as to who will actually undertake the independent review. So we will let you know about that in a written answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. The next question, question 2, also anonymous. As is clear from the judgment, incorrect records with doctors were established as fact in court in this case. Have these been corrected since the judgment was served a month ago? Cabinet Member for Children and Families again, please.
And thank you again for your question and your follow-up question. My understanding is that incorrect or inaccurate records have been corrected, but again, I think it's sensible to inform you in writing so that we can be absolutely sure that all the corrections that should have been made have actually been done. So we will do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Supplementary question 3, again anonymous. As it is clear from the judgment, professionals, particularly doctors in 2014 and 2019, were given false information by the social worker / foster carer. Have these been corrected since the judgment was served a month ago? Again, I'm afraid, Cabinet Member.
Thank you, and again, thank you for the question. And again, I'm afraid it's important we get these things absolutely right, and it would be foolish to make a mistake on this, so I would prefer if we inform you in writing. I can assure you that everything's been done to ensure that this is done as quickly and as accurately as possible.
Thank you, Councillor. Supplementary question, question 4. Anon, again, your legal department has been content for 8 years with the foster carers' non-acceptance of the 2013 judgment. Their entrenched views are highlighted in court in the court case 2015-2017. What specific training will continue and which one is planned for these foster carers and your legal team? Cabinet Member once more, please.
Thank you again for a question. And again, I think in the interest of absolute accuracy, unless anyone in the meeting is able to inform us, I would prefer this to be a written reply. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Agenda, coming now to public questions number 5. Again, anonymous. What has the FIRO done in this case over the last 4 months? Again, Cabinet Member, please.
Thank you. And again, thank you for the question. And once again, I'm going to ask that this is responded to in a written answer. I want to be sure we don't make any mistakes on this.
Thank you very much, Cabinet Member. Supplementary question number 7, Ms. T. J. Essingham. How does this structure reduce the experience of micromanagement and bullying within the service? Cabinet Member, once more.
And once again, we will reply in writing. We need to be sure we get these things accurately responded to. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. And I'm sure we'll all look forward to the answers. We have no questions from members of the Council. Here we go on to item 5. High Court judgment relating to children and families. To receive a report on the judgment of the Honourable Mr. Justice Keehan, following recent children's social care proceedings heard in the Family Division of the Royal Courts of Justice regarding a family known to Herefordshire Council since 2010. This judgment was published at 1400 hours on the 16th of April, 2021. I invite the leader of the council to introduce and move the report. He has 5 minutes for this. Leader.
Thank you, Chair. Councillors, you have in front of you a report from the acting chief executives concerning failures in the council's provision of children's services. I'm sure you will have read the report and hopefully the judgment. Rather than putting my own words to this, I would use those of Mr. Justice Keehan, which are set out in paragraph 8 of the papers. The children have been utterly failed by this local authority, by its actions, failures and omissions over the course of the last 8 years. It has compounded the emotional and psychological harm the children have suffered. The local authority has ignored, indeed challenged, the advice of a highly experienced child psychiatrist for reasons which I do not begin to understand. It has treated with contempt the clarion call of a senior family judge for the local authority to reevaluate its approach to these children, to the family and to the carers. And in another paragraph, my strongest criticism must be directed at this local authority. In the whole of my professional life, I have rarely encountered such egregious and long-standing failures by a local authority. The worst of it is I cannot, after the closest possible inquiry, understand why or what motivated the local authority to fail these children, this mother and the interveners as appallingly and for as extended a period of time. The whole history of the role of this local authority in the lives of these children is highly inexplicable. The only matter which is clear to me is that it did not have the welfare best interests of the children at the heart of his decision-making, such as it was. I'm sorry, I have just lost my screen. This is an extraordinary, damning report and judgment. I repeat my apologies and those of this council to the children and families involved. We must look back to see what went wrong and forward to what we must do in the future. The purpose of this report and this debate is to report what we currently know about the failings and to explain what actions are proposed. Of course, this is not the first time the council has been here. I have read the minutes of the meeting from January 2019. They include statements such as, a member stated that similar issues to those contained in the judgments have been a problem at the council for a number of years. A member raised the importance of moving away from a blame culture to one in which people felt empowered to admit to mistakes and to raise issues freely. A member explained that there had been a number of problems for over 10 years in children's services, and the cause had been regularly identified as the culture in the service. From what I've heard already from councillors, these same concerns and issues will be raised again in this debate. So how will our response be different this time? The report before you sets out the actions proposed, and more may emerge from this debate. First, clearly there have been failings in leadership. As the head of our organisation, we have a new chief executive, Paul Walker, who is present at this meeting. Paul is a hands-on chief executive who will lead the drive for improvement. As I'm sure you'll appreciate, other changes in leadership and management are being considered. These require the council to follow a fair and legally compliant process, so at this time, little can be said about them. Secondly, we are very fortunate to have recruited Kath Knowles as Interim Director of Children's Services. Kath is a qualified social worker, and I believe that something we must learn is that we should be very careful about appointing anyone at the head of Children's Services who does not have such experience. Kath has experience of turning around failing social services. She has done it before, and her reputation is such that she has the confidence of the various government bodies that are already involved. Third, we have national attention. We cannot hide. We cannot live in denial and fail to deliver. The Secretary of State has appointed an improvement advisor, Gladys Rhodes White, to provide advice to the department and to the council. She will work with us for a minimum of 12 months, and until such time that the Secretary of State is satisfied, this is no longer required. This is to be welcomed. Mrs. White is an outstanding leader with substantial experience and skills in transforming and improving services and outcomes for children, families, and adults, for instance, in Rochdale and Bradford. Finally, this is about culture. The culture from the past has to change. It is clear that all the monitoring and scrutiny was put in place last time failed to put us on the right path. That was too much about process and policy. The management guru, Peter Drucker, is attributed with saying that culture eats strategy for breakfast. So as we move forward, the senior management team and the cabinet will be looking for cultural change. More openness and honesty, where questioning and challenge are welcomed, where promises are delivered and mistakes acknowledged. As an administration, we promise change, and it is to my regret that we have not delivered more so far. But cultural change takes time. We have reached a watershed moment, which as leaders, we must recognize and embrace as an opportunity. I'm not saying that we must embark on an elaborate and expensive cultural change program. It's not complicated. And what we are seeking is also something which should be a natural part of all healthy organization. If it's not natural, it won't stick. It will be driven from the top by the chief executive, by me, by the senior management team, and by the cabinet. We fully intend to walk the talk. I hesitate to say much on the positive side, but this does present a real opportunity to do things differently. We can get things right. There are examples in our council of things being done really well. Take the response to COVID and the great partnership working and the huge success of the Others Directorate. There is also so much very good work to be done, but good work is being done in the Children's Directorate. Let's work to spread the good work to all of the council. I look forward to this debate. Your concerns will be listened to by me and by officers, and we welcome ideas that councillors put forward. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Leader. And can I have a seconder, please?
Chairman, I will be seconding this motion, and I would prefer to speak at the end, please.
That's fine. Thank you very much. Now, can members please indicate if they have any questions or comments? And all questions will be directed to the leader. So, questions and comments? Councillor Gandy, Councillor Kenyon, and then we have Councillor Hewitt.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Chairman. Nobody who has read this alarming judgment can be in any doubt that this case identifies an appalling litany of failings by the Children and Families Directorate. The Children's and Social Worker Act of 2017 states that the responsibility of corporate parents, which we all are, is to ensure as far as possible a secure, nurturing and positive experience for our looked after children and young people. It's our duty and our privilege to fight their corner. On a day-to-day basis, we as members rely on our staff to do this. We put our faith in them. We scrutinise and challenge performance and decision-making. We agree policy and we do our best to learn as much about the strengths and weaknesses of the Directorate as we can. But for us to do our job well, there must be transparency, honesty and trust. For me, this has always been a concern. And more recently, that trust has been tested to the limit. Challenge has been seen as criticism, responses have often been defensive, and in some cases, absolutely evasive. And the real story behind what we are told is often a very different picture, as my scrutiny committee knows only too well. Addressing only the issues raised in this judgment will not fix the Children and Families Directorate. Over recent times, there's been a real desire by many staff to improve the way we support the children and families of Herefordshire. The Early Help Hub, the Children in Need work and the Signs of Safety all appear to be working well. But within the Directorate, there still appears to be a poor work practice culture. Nothing appears to have been learnt from the High Court cases in 2018. Information is still not recorded. Birth parents are still being marginalised. Policies are not in place. Life stories are often not fit for purpose or non-existent, and legal advice has been found wanting. Serious work is required to tackle this culture, and I see this case as an opportunity for this to happen. We've a real chance now to change the culture, to no longer accept that it is okay that areas of performance are continually identified as requiring improvement, that it is okay to just encourage our social workers to input information, that it is okay to provide information to a scrutiny committee which is factually incorrect, and it is okay when questioned by members to continually give excuses for poor working practices. Since I joined this council in 2015, more extra money has been given to this directorate than any other by all administrations. This is not a financial resource issue. It is an embedded work practice culture which must be reformed. I welcome in principle the review and improvement strategy, but would wish in the very near future to have more detail of where and how children and young people's scrutiny fits within the proposals. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gandy. Councillor Kenyon.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got a few questions for councillors through the leader, if I may ask them. But I just want to start off by saying it's a huge portfolio that's scrutinised and that sort of stuff. And resource-wise, if we are going to do historic case reviews, which I think we should, I think I've read something there, we're going to need some additional government funding and support. And they need to be, as I say, totally independent of what's been going on here. I'd like to say a lot of the social workers I know, they speak to me and they contact me, do a fantastic job. And so majority of the social workers are great. Foster carers, I know many foster carers, and they do a fantastic job. So this, obviously, this is a terrible thing that's happened, but not all, don't tarnish all of them with the same brush. Huge portfolio, and this is by far the most important thing we do. We just heard Councillor Gandy mention about being a corporate parent. I've been a corporate parent for probably too long now, about 10 years, but it doesn't actually mean anything. Nothing ever, we don't get told what we're meant to do, how we can do. I do help in various different stages and that sort of stuff, but there's no structure for councillors to be a corporate parent. So to ban that word around, corporate parent, and not have any meat on that bone is just not worth it. So on to the questions then. First off, for the leader, I've got a question for Councillor Lester. Now, Councillor Lester was the portfolio holder for this whilst he was the leader of the council a few years ago. And I'd just like to ask him, did he feel that he could give enough time to this and be the leader of the council? That's my question via the leader of the council. If you can answer that, please.
Do we have your other questions as well?
Oh, yeah, of course. Then I've got a question for Councillor Gandy. Councillor Gandy was the cabinet member, I believe, for 18 months, and now she's been the scrutiny chairman for over 2 years. No, you weren't cabinet member?
No.
Just the scrutiny for the last 2 years. Okay. Initially, I was on your scrutiny committee until I was removed from the committee, but I found that the committee needs more training. When I sat on the committee with you, you'd like to have a pre-meeting and try and tell people what questions to ask and all the rest of it. The councillors on there, all new councillors, many of them actually need some proper training on how to scrutinise. So that was my feeling when I sat on that committee. It was led by you, Councillor Gandy, as an experienced councillor, but I kind of feel additional training needs to be given to those scrutiny members of that committee. I'm sure you'll nod your head there in agreement. My final one is to Councillor Norman. Accountability is a huge thing, and for Joe Public to have confidence in us, I think that there are things that are going to be happening within social services. There are, as the leader said, there are things we need to follow, and if people have been found to do wrong, which they have, I'm sure actions will be taken. Now, for Joe Public, we are the elected members. We are the ones that get voted in and voted out, and so we need to be accountable. So, Councillor Norman, you were chairman of the Children's Scrutiny, I think, for the whole of the 4 years prior to being going into administration, and you've been a cabinet member for the last 2 years. Now, you've said yourself, it's probably taken you 2 years to understand that how this all works. And I know you're a clever person, and I have confidence in you personally. But has Joe Public got confidence in you now? Because you've been 6 years in this role, and you are the closest to this than any other councillor within this. So my question would be to Councillor Norman: can you justify why we shouldn't be asking for you to resign from your post, and what you will personally be doing differently, after listening to Councillor Leicester's response to, if you try to spin too many plates, they will fall. And I hope you've thought about this over the last few weeks, and some wholesale changes will be made. So, Chairman, thank you for indulging me and let me speak over my time. Those are 3 questions to those 3 councillors via the leader. If they could be answered, I'd very much appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kenyon. Leader, would you like to distribute those questions or add something of your own?
No, well, I think actually, Chairman, I'll leave it to you if you wouldn't mind. Those 3 questions have gone direct to those 3 people, and then perhaps at the end of that, I'll have a word.
Right. Oh, shall we start with Councillor Leicester, please?
Yes, thank you. Councillor Kenyon, I was not Cabinet Member for Children's Services while I was leader. That was Councillor Swinglehurst.
All right. Would you like Councillor Swinglehurst to have something to say? Councillor Swinglehurst, as you seem to be the one.
No, sorry, Chairman, I think the point Councillor Kenyon was trying to make was that there wasn't enough attention directed at children's services at the time. Well, there was an appointed cabinet member. I'd done the role in the past, but when I became leader, I didn't have the role of being cabinet member for children's services. So you had a dedicated councillor in that role. I, as leader of the council, had other responsibilities as well, but it wasn't a role that I was sharing at the time.
Thank you, Councillor Leicester. Now, Councillor Kenyon, you had, who's the other person who wanted to speak?
No, I just up. It's a point I make because it's a very busy portfolio.
I think
thank you. Okay, right now, I think Councillor Gandy, did you want to?
Yeah, Councillor Kenyon is correct that I was, I've been chairman of Children's Scrutiny for 3 years. I've never been the cabinet member, and Councillor Norman was my vice chair. She's not been chairman. He is correct in as much as there are all of the members of my scrutiny committee since 2019 are brand new councillors, and I think that probably is unique within the council, and I think we all could do with more training. But ultimately, if you ask questions and you are not given the truthful answers, then you have nowhere to go. And this is one example, but we have similar examples with regards to peer-on-peer abuse, where we have asked questions but been given information that is incorrect. And in my 35 years as a councillor, I've only once ever had to apologise to a member of the public for giving them an incorrect answer, which I believed to be correct, but it was not correct. And I felt absolutely dreadful about that. So yes, we could all do with training, not just within children's scrutiny, but every scrutiny committee and probably planning as well. But, you know, ultimately, if you do not get a truthful answer to a question you have asked, no matter how much training you get, that will not make any difference to your situation.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Norman.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Kenyon, for your question. I do understand the frustration that you're feeling, and probably others as well. In response to your specific point, or just to clarify, as Councillor Gandy said, I was not actually chair of scrutiny, but was vice chair. And yes, in that role, I think we all have some responsibilities. On the specific about resigning, I must admit I did consider it. When this shocking judgment came through, the draft version of it, which was some weeks ago now, I think we were all absolutely stunned and shocked and upset by it. And I've had several weeks to consider this, to read it more fully, to look at the implications and my role in it, as well as all the other aspects. But I feel resigning is a gesture. I really don't feel it's going to help the situation in any way on reflection. and what we want are to take positive steps that will improve things. I think continuity is important, and I am absolutely committed to ensuring that we achieve the changes and improvements that we all want to see. I want to go further than that. I want us to improve the mistakes that have been made and the faults that we have within this system. But I want us to achieve better than that and to be an excellent service in the long run. We realise that's going to take a very long time. I want to be part of that. So although I understand the question, I will not be resigning. I will be staying and be part of solving this problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Norman. Leader, did you want to have your final say?
Well, I suppose it's an interesting thing, isn't it, when you get elected? First of all, the electorate can't choose people who are particularly qualified and skilled. So we end up with a group of people to decide who to put in which cabinet posts, and that's democracy for you. And also, I think the point has been made very well by Councillor Gandhi that, you know, we are, I think, there as members of the public asking questions. We are not experts, and we should not be experts. We should be asking the straightforward questions that members of the public want to ask. Now, is that a failed system? It should work. It works in most places. I think we have just been failed, and Councillor Gandhi has said, in asking these questions and not being given the truth. That's something which we need to guard against in the future. So it's the most, in many, well, you know, I was going to say it's the most pressing and most difficult department and pressurized department to lead. But I think there are so many other departments that are in the same position. And if you have to look after council finances, that's a very pressured thing. But this is about people, and this is about children, and this is about the future. And so it is such a hugely responsible role. Of course, we're all corporate parents. So we should all be hopefully contributing and being positive towards this and what we can do to move this department forward. And I do hope that the people we have put in place now will be able to make a significant difference. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Hewitt.
Thank you, Chair. I'm hoping that there will be some discretion because I have a script and it is going to run over 3 minutes. So I plead for the Chair's discretion. Thank you. Like any other right-thinking human being in this room, I'm appalled at Judge Keehan's findings, but sadly and significantly, I'm not surprised. Perhaps it's in my nature to be hyper-vigilant, but from the outset, I've had little confidence in the local authority's children's department. Their briefing to new councillors used an anonymised case of a local family in severe difficulties as an example to illustrate how difficult their work was. It was prurient and uncomfortable. It pointed the finger at shameful parenting in a belittling manner, failing to demonstrate any insight or leadership as to how the circumstances of the case might have come about, for example, because of social deprivation, historic abuse, failure of education system, low wages, etc. I had to leave the room and steel myself. Looking back, this presentation gave a clear picture at the outset of the weakness of the Directorate. Shortly after being elected, I became advocate for a resident who was trying to engage with the council to ensure children in the county would be lawfully safeguarded in the event of peer-on-peer sexual abuse. The journey which followed becoming advocate for this individual has been a harrowing one. It's broken my trust with the processes in this council and with the Children's Directorate. As a result, and like 2 other councillors I now learn in this room, my contribution to being a corporate parent has been to be unable to sign up to being one because in the current climate, it's a sham. Sexual abuse from whatever quarter in society it emerges creates deep psychological wounds for the individual, predominantly girls and women. These are compounded and magnified when those who have a duty to safeguard fail to do so. It's corrosive to the moral integrity of the perpetrator and the personal validity of the victim. Too many of us are walking wounded, ashamed to admit that we have to self-repair, just required to get over it and move on. Women and children in Herefordshire deserve better. The legal duties which underpin safeguarding in the event of peer-on-peer are derived from the Human Rights Act and Equalities Acts. The Council has taken a very long time indeed, 4 years, to fully wake up to the issues here and begin to take action. There are families that have been affected in the wake of that delay. During the course of trying to bring to light the issues around the handling of peer-on-peer abuse, I've encountered evidence that the Children's Directorate, along with help from Democratic Services and the legal team, have done everything they can to block public questions, to pull the wool over the eyes of elected members, both cabinet members and ordinary members, and to prevent scrutiny from doing its work. I am going to enumerate the methods by which this is achieved in what follows, and I believe that the review into why the CSO report was not shared with councillors will uncover much of what I detail. So, obscuring facts by hiding essential information, for instance, the CSO report, giving incomplete information, for example, the report into historic cases and as to whether any child was at risk of harm, taking a damaging length of time to understand legal duties in relation to safeguarding and therefore failing to act in a timely manner, using GDPR as a catch-all smokescreen to avoid uncomfortable questions, using delaying tactics, repeatedly ignoring the legal duty to respond to a safeguarding alert within a legal 24-hour framework, not responding to emails or not responding in a timely manner, responding to matters other than the ones raised, closing down public questions by labeling them as defamatory, exhausted editing of public questions to scrutiny, and closing down any statement of fact, no or incomplete follow-up on agreed actions, frequently adopting a threatening and obstructive stance by using the unreasonable behaviour policy, repeatedly instructing officers and cabinet members that they were not to speak to the whistleblower, seeking, and I am sad to say succeeding, to embed the view with councillors that the whistleblower was malicious and or damaged in her persistent safeguarding alert. Finally, a refusal to entertain and investigate quickly the possibility that they could be wrong. In my experience, the actions of those in the legal department and democratic services in relation to the issue of peer-on-peer sexual abuse have actively facilitated and covered up failure in the Children's Directorate in Hereford Council's duty to safeguard. Their actions have obstructed the scrutiny work of councillors and sought to protect the Directorate or the reputation of the council, seemingly without question. Like Judge Keehan, I have found the actions of the Children and Young People's Directorate to have their own best interests at heart when there's a problem, and the best interests of the children in the county then come a very, very far second. Like Judge Keehan, I have found that in the case I've been most intimately involved with, the best interests of children have not been the driving factor in the Directorate's actions. As an elected council, the experience has been a struggle, and goodness knows how the general public cope with the tactics I've described. As a teacher, safeguarding was always our primary responsibility. Any failure to safeguard, to record, report, adapt, meant curtains, and I failed to see why a directorate should have a different rule. I am relieved that it means we now have the opportunity for a root and branch overhaul of the Directorate. I am extremely grateful for the appointment of Kath Knowles and for the other lady who was just mentioned, Gladys Rhodes-White, and for the new CEO's part in enabling this. Thank you, Mr. Walker. In the few weeks Kath has been with us, I am already aware that she's taken swift action to communicate with the whistleblower in relation to peer-on-peer abuse and to take action with officers. I cannot begin to articulate how grateful I am for this. I'm calling for trauma awareness training, preferably to be led by RASAC, for all councillors and officers. I'm calling for supervision for all councillors as and when they require it. I'm calling for a complete overhaul. I see that there's one mentioned of the whistleblowing policy, but I think it needs looking at again. And I'm calling for scrutiny, which I think will happen in the investigation into the hiding of the CSO report, into the role of legal and democratic services. Residents should be allowed an equal footing when raising matters of concern. The Great Post Office scandal demonstrates that where one party has all the bells and whistles, the other party doesn't stand a chance. Finally, my sincere sympathy goes to any employees working hard in the Children's Directorate to do the right thing. They have been let down by their team. Like me, it will take time and proper leadership to restore their confidence and trust. Kath Knowles appears to be the right person to do this. To me, it appears that there is an embedded culture of using cover-up to protect reputation at all cost, and this has to change. I commit, as councillor, to being part of the solution in what is open to me. Thank you for your forbearance.
Thank you, Councillor.
Chairman, apologies to interrupt. Councillor Graham Andrews did drop out for a few moments. Can you please check he can hear and be heard?
Councillor Graham Andrews, can you hear and see?
I can see and hear you. I wasn't aware I dropped out because I've listened to everything that Councillor Hewitt's just said.
Right, so you heard at any rate. That's the main thing. Yes, we
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, I think it was myself, Councillor Graham Jones, that dropped out, but I'm now back with you.
You're back again. We can see and hear you. Thank you very much indeed. I come now to Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Chair. My concern in all of this is continual governance. How can I, as a corporate parent, be assured that the 321 children in our care are safe from harm when it is clear that the council hasn't learnt its lessons or put in practice? An extraordinary meeting was held on Friday, the 18th of January in 2019. A task and finish report was published in February 2019 with 14 recommendations where similar themes were identified. A need for child-centred, compassionate and empathic care, a lack of management oversight, poor recording, and a need for a change in culture. We've had numerous improvement boards. We've had a Doncaster review, the Essex review, following the recent pair on pair. We've now got an independent review. But history informs our future. And I would like to know, I have 3 questions. What happened to those 14 recommendations in the task and finish report of February 19? What governance is in place to take responsibility to make sure that those and any forthcoming recommendations are actually implemented to actually inform and make change? And my 3rd question is related to the healthcare pathway. Is the healthcare pathway being investigated following the death of a 15-year-old girl? When reading the judgment, there are key issues to be raised. I'm not sure who can answer my questions, but those are the 3 questions that I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Leader.
Chairman, can I perhaps ask Kath Knowles, you've been mentioned a few times, Kath, whether you were able to pass any observations on what happened in 2019 and the outcome of that.
Yes. Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Chair. if I may, I'd like to come back on the first question around the recommendations, the 14 recommendations in 2019, so that I can give a full and accurate answer on that one. In terms of the governance, the independent DFE advisor, Mrs. Rose White, who's been mentioned today, will be the person that is in charge of the governance of any improvement work that we are going to do going forward, including the rigour around any independent assessments and evaluations and reviews that we are undertaking, including the current review that is in train at this moment as we speak, and that as the DFE advisor, she reports on a 6-weekly basis back to the DFE to give the minister assurance that we are being as open and transparent, and our progress is going in the way that it needs to go for the children and young people and families of Herefordshire. So that's the difference in this with the board and the governance. And in terms of the healthcare pathway, what I can say is that we have what's called a child death overview panel. It's a statutory panel that we have to have as part of our Children's Safeguarding Partnership. I do know that the case referred to has been to that panel. What I'm following through at this moment is the actions arising from that panel and any learning from that. That will be something together with what we call a rapid review that will be undertaken to see whether we need to look at this as a wider learning and indeed possibly a national learning. So all of those processes sit under what we call our Children's Safeguarding Partnership, who has an independent scrutineer. So I hope that's answered the question, Chair and Leader.
Thank you very much indeed. Now we come to Councillor Summers.
Thank you, Chair. I may be mistaken, but I seem to remember the leader mentioning everyone in his speech, except I didn't hear members mentioned at all, elected members. Can I be assured all elected members will in the future be listened to? Because half the time we're not. I've sat on, as people, a number of health and wellbeing committees. I've sat on a couple of task and finish groups. The last couple, I believe, Councillor Yolandi Watson mentioned, but one before that, I even stated that I was not happy the way it was done, and I even put it in writing, which I've been looking for. I'm afraid I can't give it to you right now. So there are some major issues here. I find this is my second term. And I find that it works this way. It's officers, cabinet, and chairs. If you're just a simple elected member, you don't have a lot to say or you're not listened to. And I have to take responsibility for a lot of this because I should have been more aggressive in putting out my feelings about certain things. And I will in the future, I can assure you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Councillor. Leader, would you like to give a quick response to that?
Yes, I do hear you, Councillor Summers, and in a way I go back to the 2019 council meeting. I wasn't a councillor at that time, but there's reference there to members having known for some time that things were not right, and I've heard similar comments since then. The members and for some reason members weren't able to engage and to make things happen. And we do have to change that. We have to, as a whole council, as officers, as cabinet members, we have to listen to this, if you like, intelligence that members are wanting to pass on to us, and which for some reason just doesn't get through. So I would hope that we as administration and going forward will be a more listening administration. So thank you for your comment. I think from my perspective, I do try very hard to communicate as much as possible. But if I spent all my day communicating, I wouldn't end up getting an awful lot done, I'm afraid, apart from communicating. So there's a balance that has to be struck. There are a limited number of hours in the day, but we do need to get better at this. So thank you for your observation.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor James.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a very sad day for Herefordshire Council, but it follows many sad days before when we've had the failings of the children's services being highlighted. What has happened is unforgivable. It's a failure not only of management, officer management, but also of political management. I've been warning of what has been going on for at least 10 years. And whenever I would raise this particular issue, we'd get blank stares from officers and from some members. When is this going to end? You know, we've heard all these, yes, we've got to look forward, we mustn't look back, but we've got to know why nothing has changed. I've been with families who've been under the cosh of children's services. They've asked me to help and to support them. I've been appalled at the ethos that exists within some of social workers within children's services. I attended one particular pre-birth adoption meeting, and I was absolutely disgusted at the way in which there was not a shred of compassion towards the families concerned in this harrowing case. And that is not alone. I congratulate Councillor Hewitt on having the right attitude towards the children's services. One must be questioning. Too many people in senior roles in the political roles of the council have over the years been unquestioning supporters of officers. There are some wonderful social workers who do incredible work within the council, but not all of them. And we've got to admit to that and do something about it. I watched yesterday the Cabinet Secretary under the grill of the committee in the House of Commons yesterday. And there was an all-party, it didn't matter what party you were, you grilled the Cabinet Secretary and they didn't hold back. So often, members of the Scrutiny Committee and the Council tend to hold back in this particular and not be sceptical about the responses they get from officers. The one thing I want to know is, at what point and who was responsible for taking this case and previous cases to the final hurdle? When this became apparent that this particular case, we'd got it wrong, Council continued to fight it up to the Crown Court. This has cost the Council hundreds of thousands of pounds in monetary and will do in the coming years, possibly millions of pounds. And yet we carried on oblivious to the fact that we'd got it wrong. We knew, the council knew, and the officers, and I assume that cabinet members and leadership of the council were informed all along about this. They continue to throw more money at it in order to try and brush it under the carpet. For goodness sake, change our attitudes. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ianson, followed by Councillor Matthews, Selden and Leicester.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. As 16+ children's champion, I feel compelled to speak on this. And yesterday, I wrote an impassioned speech which contained words like guilt and phrases like above reproach. This morning, I tore it up because this isn't the place for indulgence. And I'd just like to make a couple of points which have reiterate what has actually already been said and draw your attention to the summary of key findings, point I, which says that Herefordshire Council provided incorrect legal advice regarding the authority of the council as corporate parent to consent to turning off the life support, and also numbers 18 to 20 in the community impact regarding corporate parenting. And I draw your attention to the corporate parenting panel of 2 weeks ago. This panel had in the agenda, it contained an item which wasn't discussed as the officer was on leave, and another item which had no one to present it, so it wasn't discussed. Out of 50 plus councillors, there are probably 10 of us present. How committed is that? My question is, what might any of our looked after children feel, and children we look after as corporate parents feel, if they were to read this judgment, especially as their children desperate for continuity in their care and to come off the endless waiting lists that they are on? I hope that when our new chief executive takes up his role, his first action will be to take the relevant decisions that we all know must be made in order to begin the difficult task of restoring confidence into our children's services. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Matthews.
Thank you, Chairman. Very sad day for this council, which I've been proud to serve in for an awful long time. Members will know, as Councillor James has said, I've raised numerous issues, and some of the points that are referred to by the leader when questions were asked by me. It's been an issue that I've paid attention to and have queried the efficiency of for many, many years. Ofsted have constantly raised the same issue of lack of supervision by senior staff in support of frontline officers. I think if that had been dealt with years ago, we could have avoided most of the failings that have come about today. That's been a weakness which Ofsted have been raising for years and years, and I've been raising it for the last 10 or 12 years, and that's just a number of others. And when I've asked, why aren't you dealing with the issues that Ofsted keep raising, they keep saying, oh yes, they've been dealt with, but they were never resolved. The other issue that concerns me, Chairman, is that could I ask the cabinet member, was she aware that lack of supervision was one of the weaknesses and concerns, and could she tell us what actions she's taken over the last few years to address it? The other thing is, could I ask the director, are there any other issues that are in the system at present which are of concern to her and members? Could she inform us that the committee is working efficiently now, or are there concerns still to be dealt with? But then, Chairman, when you go down and read a senior officer saying the conduct of the Children's Services Department in the lives of these children as appalling. That sums it up. And that's a senior officer. There's been many flaws and weaknesses. I know it's easy to sit on the outside and criticize, but these have been blaring concerns that myself and others have raised. And I'm sorry to say they've been haven't been addressed. And if they had been, I think we probably wouldn't have been in this situation today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Norman, I think your right of response is there.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not entirely clear on the question there. I believe it's about the corporate parenting arrangements. Is that your question, Councillor Matthews? It was not very clear to me. I'm sorry.
Councillor Norman, the question was the issue raised by Ofsted about the lack of supervision by senior management in respect of the system generally and in support of frontline staff. That's a weakness raised constantly. I've wondered whether you...
Thank you, Councillor Matthews. Apologies, it was I'm not hearing as clearly as I would like to be able to, so thanks for clarifying that. I believe there is still a lot of work to do on this. It is an area where we are aware and have been aware of weaknesses. I think Kath Knowles can probably reassure you to a certain extent that we are looking at this and looking for ways of improving this. And there have been already a number of changes, and further changes are intended, but it has been an issue for a while, you're quite right. Just on the corporate parenting, as you were mentioning it, we do welcome as many councillors as possible engaging and becoming involved with this, since you've brought that up, and would be very happy to see more attending, not just meetings, but actually coming along and sitting in on MASH and some of the other things that are happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Can we have the interim director, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. And thank you for the question. Couple of things. I know Andy Gill is on the in the meeting today, so I'll ask him to just report on some of the changes we've made around the supervision, specifically around that question. But a couple of points that I would just like to reassure. As with my experience, as with any improvement journey, when you start turning stones and lifting stones and looking and do wholesale review, you will find there will be other areas of concern that we need to address, and so I will say honestly that there may well be more areas, but that's the sort of root and branch review that is needed, so that everything is in the open and we do know the extent of what we need to improve and what we need to change, so it's sustainable going forward. So I would add that as a caution, that the more reviews, the more intense reviews we do, the more we look, yes, we may well find more, but that's a positive thing, because once we know what it is, we can then start doing the work that we need to do to get that right and change the cultures. In terms of corporate parenting, I have become aware that the corporate parenting does need to be reviewed and looked at how this is working as effectively to allow councillors to discharge their duties as corporate parents. And I would welcome an opportunity to work with members to help with design and redevelop that, along with our young people in care, who will help redesign what that needs to look like. So just to give you both of those reassurances. Andy, is it possible for you to just confirm around some of the changes around supervision, please, in response to Councillor Matthews' question?
Right. Thank you very much.
Yeah, just to thanks, Kath, and thanks very much for the question. So over the last 2 years, some members will be aware that we've had a concerted effort through the development of a single improvement plan to pick up specific issues around Ofsted, one of them being around the number and the frequency of personal and case supervision, because clearly historically it has not been where it needs to be. Through the tracking of that, there is some assurance that the frequency of supervision has significantly improved. But just counting numbers is only part of the story, because actually what we need to be looking increasingly at is the quality of supervision. Does it create a safe space, for instance, for managers and social workers to reflect on their own practice and to robustly look at care and support plans for children, young people and families. So through our work with Essex, who are our external partner around improvement, that's been a theme. We've recently completed learning and development work around what good reflective supervision, creating a space to allow social workers to reflect on their own practice and to use the support from their line manager to develop plans. That training is now being delivered, and I was also involved in some follow-up training around that. And we've also got future plans to do more, working alongside our staff and managers to achieve better quality supervision.
Thank you very much. Leader, I think you wanted to have a few words as well.
Yes, I think there's a little bit of an emerging theme here, which I want Paul Walker to comment on, if he may. So it's the fact that elected members feel that they're a little bit disenfranchised, that they're raising concerns and they're not being listened. And going forward, you know, Paul and I are going to have to work on this. Paul, you were chief executive in Copeland, and I seem to recall from your CV that this was a really key issue for you at that time. I'm just wondering whether you could give assurances as to how things might change and how we might work forward to deal with this issue.
Yeah, Mr. Walker, are you ready for this?
Yeah, yes, I am. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, David. Yes, for me, this is a really important part of the Chief Executive's role, to make sure elected members are regularly briefed and kept up to date on progress. And as a Chief Executive, you open those briefings up for questioning and challenge, so that members have the opportunity to fully understand what progress is being made, and to check in terms of issues which remain outstanding. And I think that's one of the things that I will bring to the role of Chief Executive, is that regular briefing of members across all political groups, and ensuring that the standing committees and forums are fully updated around progress, and the learning that's come from this particular incident and a number of matters are picked up, and the training and development for members to help them become better and more formidable scrutineers of our work, and to challenge the progress and hold officers accountable as a key part of what officers do is key for me. So yes, look forward to that opportunity and working with the leader and group leaders to ensuring that the wider members are kept abreast and briefed of progress, and have the opportunity to challenge and question me on a regular basis about those developments. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. That's very interesting. Councillor Selden, followed by Leicester and Swinglehurst.
Thank you, Chair. I think I must be out of order a bit here, because I thought I was at the back of the queue, but
you weren't actually. Earlier on, you were at the.
I was, yes. Chairman, retrospect is a fine thing, and I would sincerely hope that there's not one member in this room who has not been questioning what they could have done, what questions they could have asked, and what other actions they could have taken to avoid this. This has history, as members have already pointed out, and I recall being a scrutiny chair around the 2012 time of an inadequate Ofsted, and that inadequate Ofsted highlighted poor record keeping, poor supervision, and other matters that have come before us already. So I say this to Kath Knowles, this has a history going back at least 9 years. And changing that culture within the organisation will be a task that I do not envy you for. The role of scrutiny is incredibly important. And as Councillor Gandhi has pointed out, when you are faced with a scrutiny committee made up of entirely new councillors, it is incredibly difficult to get anything meaningful out for at least a year, because members need to be trained and need to ask the right questions. And very few councillors fail to learn, and I still learn how to ask the right questions. And I was ticked off by a cabinet member the other day for asking an open question, and quite rightly. And it's a skill, and it's something that we need to work on, because going forward, I believe scrutiny is going to have an increasingly important role in the work that needs to be done to solve this. Now, Bromyard is very useful in this, because we are in somewhat very, very fortunate to have the Hope Centre in Bromyard, which is a bit independent from the Herefordshire Council system. Not totally, but a bit. And it's interesting with the conversations I have with the directors there of some of the issues that are being raised today and came out in the two judgments of 2009 to 2018-19 and this one are recurring themes that members have already picked up on. So my point, Chairman, really is that the role of scrutiny has to be beefed up, and I hope Mr. Walker, and I know, in fact, I think I know Mr. Walker will enhance that role of scrutiny to make sure that those officers that appear before scrutiny committees are properly briefed, but are not evasive, and they have the confidence and the self-worth to tell us the truth about what's going on, because I believe that's what's at the core here. It's the lack of trust that officers have in their own abilities and the lack of trust they have in us as members to tell us the truth at scrutiny committee. So let's solve that. And if we can solve that, I believe we'll be 90% of the way there to solving the structural problem there is within this department. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Now we come to Councillor Lester, followed by Councillor Swinglers, Toynbee and Hay.
Thank you, Chairman. Naturally, I'm appalled at the findings, and I think it's right that these matters have been brought to a head, and it's right that the judge has said all of the things that he said. And so here we are today, reeling from the failures that have been that these families have had to suffer, and that is appalling. But we must also at the same time remember how challenging social work is, and when it goes right, it saves children, and that's something that we should never lose sight of. But there are big failings that we must address. I listen to what the fellow members are saying, and from my perspective, it is a real challenge, whether you're on scrutiny, whether you're a cabinet member, whether you're attending the performance challenge meetings. You can ask all of the questions you like, and you can ask the most probing questions. And I've asked questions, where is the IRO report? Where's the latest report? Why aren't these practices being done? And you're given answers. But then the challenge is what happens after you've asked those questions? That's the real challenge for members, and how we engage members to assure them that what is being addressed is being addressed. Unless we do that, councillors will always be in a powerless position to try and affect change. Now, I welcome what's being proposed with these proposals today, the board and the reviews. I welcome that, and I think that that can really help. But my concern is we've tried these things before. We've had external help. We've had organisations come in and do sampling. And in the report, I note that 19 cases have been reviewed. No red flags have been highlighted. But this isn't comprehensive enough. And what I look to officers to assure me that we need a wholesale review of every single case, not just sampling, a wholesale review of every case so that no stone is left unturned. Everything is reviewed. And the problem with boards and the problem with reviews is you get snapshots and statistics. And that isn't good enough in this case. You need a wholesale review of every case. And then after that, you need to ensure that our staff are bolstered by other experts giving us expert opinions to help them do their job. Just coming in and doing a bit of training and then hoping everything will be okay and then going away again isn't addressing the cultural issues. So not only do we need reviews, we need our staff to be helped with external professionals to help us through that. I welcome all of the new staff that we've got, but this extra help needs to stay with us until we are righted. Otherwise, once all of that is put to bed, we will still be left with the cultural problems that we've got. So I'm fully happy to support the proposals, but let's not make them short-term snapshots and statistics. Let's make this ingrained in what we're doing from now on. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. We now have Councillor Swinglers.
I just wonder whether I could respond to...
Yes, of course.
Chairman. I think you're absolutely right, Councillor Lester. asking what is kind of different this time and what we can do. I just wanted to ask Claire Ward and perhaps Paul Walker if they could give some in that regard.
Claire Ward.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I'm happy to confirm we are undertaking that 100% of all cases in the system to be reviewed to ensure we've got that root and branch. Definitely need to do that. The Essex piece of work that came in was only that red flag work, just to answer that question of how worried are we for the regulators. This is a long-term piece of work. This is certainly, I could see, between 3 to 5 years, and certainly that's the commitment from senior management.
Thank you. Mr. Walker.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I think for me, the principle that we've adopted here is to leave no stone unturned. And to do that, we are having 100% review of all, 100% audit of all our live cases. That's the only way we can be absolutely confident and assured of the current state of those cases. Otherwise, we will be continually looking over our shoulders, and that's not how we can go forward. So the 100% audit is an important feature of the principle of leaving no stone unturned. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Councillor Swinglehurst, followed by Toynbee and Hay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the reassurance that's just been given. I think it's really, really important, crucial, and I thank you all for that. I'm going to acknowledge His Honour Justice Kean for the detailed nature of his observations. They're very hard to read, very upsetting, but he's shone a light and given us an opportunity. And I think that's hopefully something that we can take full advantage of in the interest of the children in our care. And in the interest of the children in our care, I would like to support Councillor Norman. I've been where you are now, and I absolutely support you to carry on doing what you're doing. You're somebody who cares, you have tremendous integrity. And at the end of the day, we have to be looking at what is the right thing for the children, and chopping and changing for some sort of meaningless gesture is not the right thing. The right thing is continuity. Reading the findings is very difficult. There are operational specifics, individual decisions that raise very serious questions, and it will need a full, frank and detailed investigation, and I'm very pleased to support that suggestion that's been made. It's essential that we know that we're not reliant on individuals being 100% right 100% of the time in this world of imperfect, the very challenging, difficult world of children's services. We need assurance that the checks and balances that are in place are sufficient and that they work. And there is reference to a safety net in the proceedings that was completely dysfunctional. We have to have confidence in all of this, because we owe it to the children in our care, we owe it to the families, foster carers, and actually very importantly to the social workers on the front line, that they have that support, and that the safety nets that are there, the checks and balances that are there, work and are fit for purpose. In that context, I'm deeply concerned by the referencing in the report to the usual practice in Herefordshire, and in paragraph 189 of a mindset, reference to a mindset, the implication being that there is a culture that has taken root in children's services, that it is not policy, it's not strategy, it's preference. It's something that's grown up over time, it's prejudiced good practice. It must be found out, it must be rooted out of every crevice. And this is going to be, I think, very, very challenging, because it will require a level of trust, openness and courage. And I think as elected members, we have to support that work in every way that we can. There's a great deal to consider here. The serial failing of decision-making, of the checks and balances, a lack of policy, a lack of respect for professional and judicial expertise. It speaks of shortcomings, both historic and current, and of cultural canker. But as the leader has noted, we have been here before. Reassurances have been given before, external advice and scrutiny has been sought before. We're all corporate parents. We need to insist on and ensure improvement. And it's been said that for some members, corporate parenting is meaningless. And I would challenge that. I think as a corporate parent, it's not meaningless if you turn up to the corporate parenting meetings, if you listen to Your Voice Matters, if you engage and ask questions of children's scrutiny, if you attend the performance challenge sessions, if you put awkward questions, if you ask, if you challenge, then you're doing your job as a corporate parent. That's what you're here to do. And not just every now and then in a full council meeting. This is day-to-day involvement. And I have to say, you know, I attend corporate parenting meetings and not all members do. And perhaps all members present today should consider that. I'm going to just finish by asking that on a very sort of broad point really, but where legal advice is sought by the council, that it is looked for in a way and in a place that is appropriate to the seriousness and the complexity of the question being asked, which is sort of, you know, very basic. And I think we need to be certain that we have a system in place which sort of says that this is where we go for this advice, and this, you know, so that we know we're getting the right advice at the right time, the right place, according to the seriousness and complexity of the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. We have now Councillor Toynbee, Hay, followed by Councillor Chance.
Thank you. Yes, firstly, I second Councillor Watson's comments. I was also going to ask about the recommendations from the January 2019 task and finish. So I was pleased to hear Kath's responses about that, about governance in particular. And as she says, as we move forwards, more areas will emerge that need to be looked at, and that's a good thing. We have had external help before, but I feel much more confident this time that we will get as deeply as we need to. It was good to hear what Andy said about supervision, and I hope there'll be opportunities for informal supervision as well as formal, so that staff feel really able to express themselves freely. So we're here to approve our strategy for reviewing the children's services, to express our solidarity with families who've been failed, and to commit ourselves to the truth. I have a couple of comments and a couple of questions about our strategy. I don't expect full answers today. They're just points I don't want to get lost. I welcome the proposed support for members of Children's Scrutiny Committee for obvious reasons. I welcome the new Chief Executive, and I'm looking forward to him pushing us all as councillors and officers. And it was good to hear what Paul just said about briefings and accountability. And that we ask the most basic questions, and let's do that in plain English, not in council speak. I welcome our interim head of Children and Families Directorate, and it's obvious that she's already rolling up her sleeves, shaking things up, which is great. I'm sure all of us, since this judgment, have heard from friends and residents for whom this has been extremely emotional because it's raised personal cases for them. And I feel really relieved that that I now feel able to go to Kath and say, Kath, please look at this. Please listen to this family. And that is, I'm really grateful for that. My first question, I'm going to start gabbling now. My first question is about the legal department. And we're here because of a court judgment. Obviously, it should never have got that far. It's appalling. I'm glad the judge pulls no punches. It's quite a read. The judgment identified incorrect legal advice being given to management. And this is mentioned in paragraph 34 of our report. The paragraph in our report reads, there have been significant changes made to the management and staff within the children's legal team, and also new protocols and training to ensure processes are observed and advice is sound. I'm afraid to me that's too much like the usual kind of answer. So to me, I'm not quite sure that's adequate. There's a lot in our strategy about action that we must take for children's services, but I would like to add some more specific actions about improving our legal services. The relationship between social workers and our lawyers is really crucial. There seems to be a reluctance for social workers to engage with the legal department. Why was this? Have our legal department been proactive enough, particularly in following up recommendations from judges? How can we improve engagement between social workers and our legal department? These are questions that I really want us to look into. I'm sorry, I'm going over time, I won't be long. My second question is about independent reviewing officers, who are obviously absolutely central to the well-being of our children. Judge Kean has previously criticised us over IROs. I note that our IRO service is part of our review, and I want to be sure that enough weight is given to that. It gets back to accountability as well, and governance. Part of the IRO role is to challenge senior management. It's really important that they feel able to do that. It's a strange balance. IROs work for us, but they have to be independent enough to take us to court if necessary. That's a really tricky balance that we've got to look at. We recently advertised for a joint post of IRO and Child Protection Conference Chair. I'm just wondering if there might be a tension between these two roles. So at some stage, I'd like an answer to that question. I'd like to be reassured that IROs are getting all the legal advice that they need. I want to be assured that they feel able to challenge senior managers. Corporate parenting has come up a lot today, and one of the roles of an IRO is to ensure that we're doing a good enough job. That is one of their responsibilities. So maybe we could consider IROs having more direct contact with us as members. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Leader, do you want to have a response to that?
Yes, I think the first is about the legal department. Has Claire Ward and Kate Charlton to that one. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've been able to have a briefing with all members in legal services over the last week to be able to explain that they don't have to take decisions on their own, that obviously where there is a decision that is of the magnitude that is in this judgment, that decisions are escalated and that we take a collegiate approach to making decisions. So that one lawyer on their own is not taking these type of decisions. So that's the escalation process we've put in place.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then there are other questions, I think, for Kath about
so, yes. Would
Yes.
you like to respond, please?
Yes, thank you. I'm certainly happy to respond in brief, but give a more fuller response in writing, as Councillor has suggested. In terms of the IROs, I'm absolutely spot on and absolutely right. They are independent. They need to be able to show that independence and show that escalation. So one of the things I have put in as part of my rolling my sleeves up is what is that process like? What's the escalation like? How's it working? Is it effective? And how are we providing that assurance that it's coming right to the top where it needs to? I also am aware that there is external legal support for the IROs, so they can take, if they don't get that, if we don't not getting it right, they can go and get external legal advice, which again is part of their IRO regulations and handbook. And I do think that IROs should have time with counsellors, and that's part of that corporate parenting. But I did pick up that it appears IRO reports are not regularly shared, and that's something I need to understand and go into. I know that Andy, who is the head of service for the quality assurance and the IRO service, is a piece of work that we will be doing to review how effective our service is and where we can shore that up and make that more robust as part of the improvement journey. I don't know that Andy can comment about the recent advert for Chair and Child Protection Chair and IRO. Andy, could you answer on that one?
Will you respond? Thank you.
Sorry, can people hear me, or am I still muted?
No, hear you, Andy. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and in fact, Councillor, again, thank you for the question. What we're moving towards actually is disaggregating the role of IRO from child protection chairs. So we're putting a lot more focus on developing the specific role around IRO and the challenge that they need to exert. Due to a vacancy, we've recently brought in a new head of service from an outstanding local authority to take on the role of managing the IRO service as well. But I welcome the comments also about direct access to members and that engagement, because that's something that I would definitely be proactively promoting going forward.
Thank you very much.
I think, Chairman, just as a having been an in-house lawyer for 30 odd years, I think the relationship with everybody in the business is so important. And I just wonder whether anybody would like to comment, any people perhaps who have experience from other authorities, as how we might improve the way the legal department works with social workers and how social workers should want to work with lawyers. Because obviously the judgment does suggest that social workers don't even have regard for what a judge says, what in-house lawyers say. I don't know, Kath, Andy, you're newcomers to us, but you had a lot of experience in other places. So kind of what do you think good looks like as far as the legal department's concerned?
I think in the few weeks I've been here, Leader, I've certainly developed a very close and robust working relationship with our legal department, and that's where you sort of model what good looks like. Is that if I, as the director, I'm working with our legal department, then that's the model I expect all the services, so heads of services and managers. I think I've welcomed that. That's been embraced. We're working very closely now with legal colleagues, and the new system that's been put in place, and I think that's really helped. That's allowed us, even in the few weeks I've been here, to have some very good, robust conversations around cases and make decisions together collectively. And that's included social workers in the meetings, team managers, heads of service, legal officers. So that we've already started that program. That is my expectation, that we have a good professional working relationship. They're there to give us advice. I've been very clear that where advice is not being considered or being ignored, then I want to know on every occasion. So that's the measures I've already put in. And I think it's something you build. We need to build it gradually, do some learning workshops together, learning workshops with social workers and legal around the messages from this judgment and previous judgments, and around the value that legal advice brings to the table. So I have quite high expectations and standards of a working relationship with our legal colleagues, and I am confident that that's already there. That culture is already started. It's in early days, but we will grow and develop that as we grow and develop our improvement work and what we need to do. I don't know whether, Andy, you want to add anything more to that?
If you would like to add a bit more.
Yeah, just to reinforce the point really. So very quickly, when we knew this judgment was going to be made and the content of that, we've actually set up an independent insurance team to specifically look at cases that are currently before the court, with a particular focus on special guardianship orders. And as part of that work and the establishment of the team, legal services were at the heart of that in terms of joint working, looking at specific cases, looking at our tracking arrangements, but also doing the learning from a legal perspective and advice on how we develop our own practice and quality.
Thank you, Mr. Gill. I think we now go to Councillor Hay, followed by Councillor Chance and Bilderson.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to respond to obviously all that great detail we've just had. Obviously, probably for the first time in a long time, certainly from what Kath has been saying, I feel quite reassured that things are going to change. So thank you for that. But I just wanted to, I know it's been said before, but we do talk in acronyms. So obviously IRO being an independent reviewing officer, and for the layperson out there, I know as obviously somebody who has been a layperson, it's really important that we make sure that we are clear in how we speak. Yeah, really mainly comments, because a lot of the questions have been raised already in the room. But firstly, I really want to thank members of the public who are currently engaging in this remote meeting, and to all the members of the public who've submitted questions this morning. Now, I hope that they all get the comprehensive answers that they require from the questions that they've asked, because I think that we as members are accountable to the electorate, and such an important part of this process is to reinstate confidence in Herefordshire Council Children's Services, through a robust and rigorous change in culture and practice. So, as I say, we have to be seen to be doing that. And I think we've heard a lot that will show that we are going to do that. And really, from my point of view, one of the primary issues is to do with children's scrutiny. I'm a relatively new member, but obviously with the committee structure, and I know we're looking at that, we are currently looking at committee structures, members do change every 4 years. So I think it's just really important that members who join committees are updated on current issues and, you know, aren't sitting there blindly. Now, of course, there's a real need for, particularly with children's services, there's a need for anonymity and for confidentiality. I mean, that has to be the primary concern, but I think there's also a need for transparency and honesty from officers. And I've sat in meetings and been given updates on number of looked after children, for example, and completely unaware of the serious issues going on behind the scenes. And so, as I say, that is something that does need to change within the confines of how we can, you know, maintaining confidentiality for all those families involved. And I am pleased to see that my colleague, Councillor Howells, is calling for immediate feedback to the Children's Scrutiny Committee on proposed improvement plans. I mean, the corporate parent issue has been raised repeatedly, but I mean, all of my working life, I've been in an environment where the interests of children are paramount. Having previously worked as a primary teacher in a London city schools, I've been in case reviews for vulnerable children. And so welfare of children has always been at the heart of what I do. So I'm really saying now that I have to have faith in the changes that are being proposed. Hopefully our new Chief Executive, Paul Walker, can bring the new hope that we need, and the proposed independent review will do the same. Because if I thought that I'd be sitting here in 2 years' time still discussing these issues, then I also would have to consider my position. So, you know, and so today has to be the day that things change. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Chance, followed by Councillor Bilderson, and Davis, followed by Fagan.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to start by echoing the apology that the leader made and others as well. You know, I'm so sorry that I and all of us actually who've served as councillors over the last 10 years haven't adequately fulfilled our responsibilities as corporate parents, clearly. Reading the full devastating details of the judgment is a really deeply sobering experience, and it brings home just how serious the long-standing issues are in our children's services, and as well as, you know, how complex these sorts of cases can be. And I expect we're all asking ourselves, you know, what more could we have done? As other people have noted, social work's an incredibly hard job, and I'm really conscious that, you know, we need to encourage more good people into social work. We need to acknowledge and celebrate excellent practice, but we do also need to prevent and call out poor practice. And, you know, it's a difficult balance. It's absolutely right that our focus today is on the things that have gone wrong. This case raises a lot of specific questions with much wider implications. So, like, for example, why was there such long drift and delay in dealing with this case over essentially 10 years? Why were there so many changes of social worker? You know, reading the judgment, it's hard to keep up, let alone what it must have been like for the children and families involved. And why was there essentially no action on previous court judgments in this case from 2013 and 2016? You know, for me, this highlights failures on the legal side of things as well as on the children's services side. So there's two big questions. You know, one is, why did management fail? And I really hope that the measures that we're putting in place and are going to vote on later are going to address that. And the second is, why as councillors have we essentially collectively failed? And we've been discussing this, you know, the challenges of scrutiny. And scrutiny isn't just the scrutiny committee, it's the corporate parenting panels, the children and families performance challenge meetings that I and others attend. You know, we review pages and pages of data at these meetings, dozens and dozens of charts and tables showing performance indicators. And yet, you know, I had no idea about, you know, the number of social workers involved in a single case, the the degree of drift and delay, the failure to act on previous court judgments. And so, you know, although we ask questions and we challenge, we haven't been able to identify these egregious challenges before now, despite previous court judgments. So we must all do better. I do think that we've got some first steps here that are addressing both. Regarding management, we've got new leadership in place, Paul Walker, Kath Knowles. Like others, I really welcome this. And many officers have worked very hard in recent weeks to put together the improvement plan that we've got before us today. It's much more robust than anything done previously, and I really, really welcome it. Regarding our role as counsellors, as corporate parents, this meeting today is a really important step. It's been a very useful debate, I think, and I really hope that one outcome will be more engagement with our scrutiny processes, more challenge, because, you know, we can't let these things, we can't let any stones go unturned. We can't hope for the best. We can't take on trust. We have to challenge, have independent, transparent scrutiny. It's the only way to ensure nothing like this happens again. So, you know, I'm grateful to the court for bringing this to light. You know, we took this case to court with our application for a special guardianship order, and it went up to the High Court because there were so many failings. Thank goodness it has been brought to light. It gives us a chance to apologise to all involved and affected, and to all of us resolve to do much better in future. So I'll be doing my part in that, and I'm sure we all will. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Boulderson, followed by Councillor Davis, Councillor Fagan and Andrews.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome the recommendations outlined in this report, and I would like to better understand and have articulated the member governance arrangements over the process. And in this instance, the role of the Independent Improvement Board, the Corporate Parental Panel and Scrutiny. So I've got 4 specific questions. So what member representation will be on the Improvement Board, if any? What would be the role of scrutiny in the process, not only to challenge, but also to avoid duplication with the Improvement Board and ensure that the recommendations are tracked to completion, because that's something that many members have raised today. To enable more effective scrutiny, how will additional member development be identified and actioned to better understand the culture, various embedded panels, plus the new practices as a result of these recommendations, and the broader operations within the Children's Directorate, not just now, but as members have identified, as committees change. And lastly, we're all corporate parents. However, I'm still a bit unclear how the Corporate Parental Panel influences or is integrated into these arrangements, and the path in which member concerns can be recorded, investigated and tracked to conclusion, because that appears to be a consistent issue raised by members as well. So there are 4 things that from a governance perspective I would like clarified, please.
Thank you, Councillor. Leader, want to come back?
Yes, I think if I can pass that one on to Claire and also Paul, issues over the Improvement Board. I think you're much more familiar with those than I am.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, the Improvement Board will be a body that the DfE will advise on the membership, but I certainly expect the Cabinet member for Children's and the scrutiny member for Children's to be on that panel. It's not currently obviously referenced in our constitution because it's a new recommendation we're making today. IT scrutiny will be one of the work streams underneath the Improvement Board. So their work will inform, and there'll be a 2-way process between scrutiny and the Improvement Board. And obviously the Improvement Board, any decisions will go into Cabinet. So there will be a circular process. And I accept that the corporate parenting panel will need to be part of a constitution to see how that works and how it influences, and member development will then come out, whether that will be a separate work stream under the Improvement Board or whether that will be part of a bigger piece. Obviously we'll take advice from the DfE.
Thank you.
And I think Claire, also you're the one who's really managing the corporate review of structures and that kind of thing. I don't know whether that's like going to be impacted by the conversation we're having now about the skills and everything related to scrutiny. And Councillor, you've done a lot of work on this as well, so you're kind of singing from the same hymn sheet, I think, probably on this.
Yeah, the rethinking governance work obviously was near conclusion, but as a result of this judgment, there is a report going to Audit and Governance Committee next week to say, can we just pause? Can we just make sure we get this all in order? We were already looking to strengthen our scrutiny. Let's just make sure we've got what we need in place for children's scrutiny as well.
And Paul, can I ask you to comment as well? That'd be helpful.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I think for me, this is an important opportunity to bring the different strands of work together, so that members can understand how the governance works for each one of those groups and pieces of work within the confines of the Improvement Board. And I think going back to what I said earlier about sharing with members through briefings how we're going to take this forward, when and how the work is getting done, how the challenge to that work takes place, we'll be able to see that through the work and order of the Improvement Board, and we can all engage with that, both officers and members alike. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Davis, followed by Councillors Fagan, Andrews and Tyler, please.
Thank you, Chair. I, like anyone who has read the judgment, was shocked and disturbed by its contents. I worked at the council in 2012 as scrutiny officer when children's services were rated as inadequate by Ofsted. During the interviews I had with Ofsted officers, I was asked, where do you believe this council is with regards to children's safeguarding? I said that we were at the very beginning of a journey, but we had a very long way to go and that significant change was required. The person advised me that this was the first honest reflection that they had heard of where we were as a council. They went on further to say that it is always better to know that you have a problem and be able to deal with that than be clueless that you have a problem at all. It was my own personal reflection that many members and officers were in the latter. I believe that we sometimes feel the need to be fluffy around children's services and say what a good job we are doing. I believe that the difficulty in the recruitment of social workers and foster carers exacerbates that. I have lost count of the amount of times that this has been used as an excuse for poor practice rather than looking at the root cause. Staff came forward, they told their stories and no one listened. We have a new whistleblowing policy which makes it easier for those who are concerned about specific areas to come forward. However, this does not go far enough. I also believe we should work with our NHS colleagues to adopt the freedom to speak up policy that has increased significantly the amount of staff, patients and members of the public to raise their concerns. Please note, freedom to speak up was as a direct result of the Francis inquiry, a different type of judgment, I give you that, but just as damning. So what could we have looked at to help us see that there were problems within the directorate? In my work as a trade unionist, I have seen enough staff turnover information to recognise when issues are systemic. When I was in children's scrutiny going through the Ofsted improvement, those figures were given at every single committee, along with caseload amounts per social worker or assistants. I believe that this needs to happen again, starting from the very next meeting. It was at the time of the Ofsted judgment that I had brought in specific training for scrutiny members on how to ask questions. It sounds like a really easy thing to do to ask questions, but bad, vague or closed questions allow for closed answers and answers not needing backup or following questions or evidence. This council has been far too slow to offer sufficient training for members, allowing the culture of covering up and in some cases actually lying to continue. As a matter of urgency, say within 1 month, training should be offered for all members on proper questioning techniques, and this must be mandatory for all, repeated annually. Finally, I cannot tell you how sorry I am to the family, foster cat family, friends, and anyone involved in this case. The pain that this judgment causes me can only be a fraction of the pain, loss, and anger that you have felt and continue to feel. I'm sorry that we've let you down. And I'm sorry that this judgment had to happen to change the systemic issues within our council.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Fagan, followed by Councillors Andrews, Tyler and Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. I have to say, as a relatively new councillor, I have been to a lot of parish council meetings over the past 2 years where I have said that children's services are doing a wonderful job. They're working hard, and it's absolutely heartbreaking to discover that a child has had to die to realize that this is just not true. While I welcome the improvement board and the changes that can occur, feel that there is a lot of work that needs to be done to restore the confidence in this council and the integrity that the council holds amongst, never mind the children and families of the county, but everybody else as well. I think that there are enormous costs to this. The implications for schools who have had to trust the advice that they've been given from Children's Services and the intense scrutiny that they will be under from Ofsted. And talking about Ofsted, in 2018, Ofsted found the Children's Service leadership inadequate and that some of the staff felt a strong disconnect from the managers. And this clearly hasn't improved, as we've heard over the years, despite slick assurances that elected members are ritually given. Things just have not changed, and we really, really need to make sure that the measures that we put in place through the Improvement Board and other measures are actually change this culture. The appalling costs to the lives of the children and families involved in this case, the financial costs that the council will have to incur through all of this and other cases, and as I said, the cost to the confidence and integrity of the whole of the council, not just the Children's Services. There's a huge amount of work that we have to do. We cannot just disregard judicial interventions and the smoke and mirrors that have been sort of spun around elected members is absolutely disheartening. I cannot reiterate that more strongly enough. And as Councillor Hay said, that actually if things do not improve, then I too will actually have to reconsider my position, because I cannot allow things like this to happen under my watch and then try and go and tell the people that elected me that everything's fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Andrews, followed by Councillors Tyler, Johnson, Harvey and Phillips.
Thank you, Chairman. We've had mention of the corporate parenting panel. As a member of that corporate parenting panel, I do feel, in the light of the judgment that we're discussing, that we have clearly failed our purpose. Are we not asking the right questions, or are we not given the right information to enable us to ask the right questions? I don't know. All I would say is I think this panel needs to be rethought and its function and form readdressed so that it can be a great deal more effective than it has apparently been in the past.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillors Tyler and then Johnson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. On first hearing about the judgment with Cabinet members some weeks ago, my heart broke for the mother in the failing of allowing the right to end life support for her child. A catastrophic decision that should never have happened. It is truly unforgivable. I had to question why a director was allowed to make such decision. This is a decision that should never have happened, and change and correct procedures should be in place now so this never happens again. Such judgment is truly difficult to read. I've tried to read it and fully understand where all the failings have come from within the Children's Services. We've heard about failures and continued failures, but without little difference. I just can't understand this. As a new councillor for 2 years and being on Cabinet, I still question why we still do not understand and understand why we don't get all the information. That has to change. It must be devastating for all the parties to be involved. My heart and feelings go out to the families and everyone at this present time. I just don't know where they will be at this moment in time. We need change. We've got to be robust. We have to scrutinise. We have to use processes that doesn't leave children and families vulnerable any longer than necessary. I have to say thank you to the families that look after our children. They work tirelessly, they raise issues, and they keep going. They are unsung heroes. And I believe now they will have a voice going forward in our council and in our future meetings. We have to listen to families. and give them the protection they dearly need. I welcome the independent assurance work being undertaken. I fully entrust the council now and the legal to move forward and make these huge changes we need so that I can fulfill being a corporate parent. I do not feel a corporate parent at this moment in time. I'm sorry. I hope with the recommendations of the report, with the direction of the new chief exec, listen to us as cabinet members. I will make sure changes are effected and that our children's services are fit for purpose for our future of our children. And I can stand as a councillor with my held up high saying I made a difference. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Mrs. Ward, I wonder if you might like to add a little comment on the legal position as far as we know.
I think the judgment makes it very clear that decision shouldn't have been taken and that we should have made an application to court.
Fine, thank you. Councillor Johnson, followed by Councillors Harvey and Phillips.
Thank you, Chairman. I think perhaps it's worth all of us as elected members to remember that we provide a range of services to the general public. One of them is safeguarding and looking after children, and they're unique in a particular way. So, for example, where we look after transport or roads, if we don't look after the roads, the public are not slow in letting us know that we've failed. If we don't collect the rubbish, the public are very quick to let us know we haven't collected the rubbish, etc., etc. The children are not in the position to make their own voice heard, to make their own complaints. And the objective here, as I'm sure we will all agree, is to make sure that the children get the protection that they have a legal right to expect and that we have a moral right to provide. The objective is not to make sure that we don't finish up in the same position again in front of a court. That should be the byproduct of having done the right thing in the first place, and most importantly, being motivated to do the right thing in the first place. The one thing I would ask Kath Newman, who I'm very pleased to see the start that she has made, is how will she ensure that children get the voice that the rest of the public already have because of their age and maturity? Who is going to do that for the children? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Knowles, might you have a quick response to that, please? You're muted.
Sorry, just unmuted myself. Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you for the question. Yes, the simple answer is that we develop what I call a really good children's participation offer to children, where we get the voice of the child right through the heart of all what we're doing. In previous experiences, I've developed children's rights groups where I've got, you have youth parliaments, you have your children in care council, young people, but children that are being worked within child in need or child protection. So for me, it's around having shadow children rights groups that ensure we capture the voice of children and what's happening. I do know that we've started that process through a survey with children and young people that Andy did, I think, earlier this year, and we're repeating that. But for me, it's around, have we got a robust children's participation officer that captures the voice of all the children so that we can make sure, and that should be something that should feature in every report that we present to scrutiny. What are children telling us? If we're changing policies, if we're changing strategies, or if we're presenting information, we should be making sure that's in reports. What's the difference we've made to children? What are the children telling us? How have we consulted with children? So that would be how I'd respond to that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kath.
Sorry? Councillor Harvey, followed by Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Chairman. Having spent 8 years as a councillor in opposition, finding it hugely difficult to ask meaningful and penetrating questions of the Children's Directorate, I had great hopes when coming into administration and becoming a member of the Cabinet that things would be different, but that simply hasn't been the case. We've heard from across the chamber in the debate today how many councillors have expressed their frustration and concern in terms of whether we collectively have failed in our responsibilities on this. And of course we can do better. Of course we can, and we must. But this has been a systemically arrogant and closed directorate. I have found it to be persistent in demonstrating delay, obfuscation, misdirection, blocking, deflection, and denial. It's been hugely frustrating to me as a Cabinet member that we have not been able to make the progress and deliver the answers that members of the public, whistleblowers, scrutiny have been seeking on very specific questions. And this judgment, I am hoping, will enable us as a council to crack open, start again, and build up and onwards the kind of children's services that this council aspires to and that Herefordshire children most definitely deserve. We have excellent social workers at our front line, and we mustn't forget that it's really important that in putting right the things that are wrong, that we continue to listen to those staff, to those professionals, to give them the supervision and support that they need, to give them manageable caseloads, but also to encourage them to be welcoming of challenge and for them to challenge one another in the way that they are working. But also, please, they must keep records. If they are not writing down what they have done, they might as well not have done it. And one of the worries that I have about some of the paper reviews, which is all that we've been able to do to begin with, is that they are founded on the records that exist. And we know that our records are patchy in places, and that poor practice absolutely has to be addressed. Social workers, do the paperwork. It's part of the job. It's so important. We need it there. Everybody in the process needs it. I'm concerned about the legal performance, and many members have already spoken about this. I can't believe that the advice was given to the director that was provided by a senior member of the Children's Services legal team, who is no longer with us. But I am also really concerned to read in the judgment from paragraph 201 onwards that in the middle of the court proceedings, this council was presenting more than 2,000 pages of new documentation to the court. I simply do not understand a whole year into this as a High Court proceeding why we were leaving it until we were actually in the middle of the hearing itself to be releasing documents to the court and to the legal teams of all of the interested parties. And I have a question, and officers know it's a question coming because I asked it last week and I've been waiting for an answer ever since then. Why did that happen? I have responsibility for corporate services as the Cabinet member. So the legal team, the governance team are within my portfolio, and I give all members today and members of the public listening and families out there my assurance that I will be paying very close attention to the legal and governance dimensions of what it is we need to do to get better than we are and get hopefully one day to good. The criticisms and concerns that have been made during the debate today, I have heard, I have listened to, and I have heard. I hope to work closely with officers and with members to improve training for members and to improve the scrutiny process as part of my responsibilities under governance. I really welcome the engagement that our new chief executive has been able to provide since March, while he's been working out his notice in his previous authority. We absolutely desperately need leadership from the top. We need executive who is, and it's clear that you are taking personal interest in this and working with your senior management team to make a difference here and to turn us around. It's not how it's been, but if this is how it's going to be, that's fantastic. Finally, as cabinet member responsible for finance, picking up on Councillor Kenyon's point, this is going to cost a lot of money to fix. We will absolutely find the money that is needed to make this happen. Have no doubt about it. But it would be fantastic if we were able to get some government support to help us get there faster or to help us get further down the road. And any assistance that our MPs can provide us in doing that would be very much appreciated. But if the support doesn't come from government, we will find the money to make this happen, because the money must not be the issue here that slows us down. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor.
Do you want me to
response from? Sorry, did it?
Yes, I was wondering whether I could pass those questions on. Perhaps it's sort of a bit of a team effort. I think Claire, Kate Charlton, and perhaps also Adam Mohammed, who we welcome to this meeting as well, whether you've got observations. I don't know who wants to start.
Afternoon. Adam Mohammed, I'm in the litigation children's team. On the legal advice that was provided, raised by Councillor Harvey, it's quite right. As per the judgment, the legal advice was wrong. The approach taken was under Section 33 of the Children Act, that the local authority could use its parental responsibility to the extent whereby it would, I hate to use the word, but marginalise mothers' rights in that respect. And that was completely the wrong thing to do, as set out in that judgment. And Claire Ward has rightly stated that it is a matter that should have gone to court. The research that should have been undertaken clearly in getting to that point simply wasn't done, or simply wasn't done sufficiently enough to get the right legal advice that was required. I hope that deals with that particular point. I mean, clearly, I take on board what's been raised earlier, that the gravity of that decision, it needed real careful thought. It needed real thinking through, and you would have to question that in that particular instance. In terms of the disclosure point, there were a number of disclosure issues that arose during the final hearing, and that is partly because documentation is kept in different places, and that needs to be resolved. It should be accessible in one particular method, one particular stream of way of doing things, and there is a disclosure policy which legal services are putting together to ensure that never happens again. Some of that arises because of a direction from the court. It sought a review of personnel records from the local authority. And as I've said, those records weren't in one place, they were in different places, and information wasn't as forthcoming as one would have hoped, which presented difficulties at the final hearing. And I know that isn't a good enough answer. I can see your gestures with respect to that, but that's unfortunately the position we're in, and that can't happen again.
Thank you. I wonder, do we have any other comments from our officer team? No, thank you. We'll now come to Councillor Phillips, followed by Councillor Ginman.
Thank you, Chairman. I would align myself with all the other comments that have been made today regarding this particularly sensitive and extremely sad matter, and also in the recommendations of going forward, and particularly with the support that we will also need to give the staff, because they are the way in which we will get this forward as well, is the people on the ground and their capacity and the support that we give them. I want to raise two particular concerns of this, and I'm sorry, I also particularly want to align myself with the comments of Councillor Hewitt and Gandhi as well in the early part of this discussion. The two issues I want to raise, first of all, are the regard to culture. A lot has been said about the role of ourselves as corporate parents. I have hopefully indirectly fed this through to the new chief executive, but I think there is an attitude and culture to elected members right throughout this council that does need to alter. And whilst unfortunately this is children's services, it happens in other departments as well, and that has got to alter as well. Secondly, this is a very serious matter. And children's services is always a very sensitive issue for elected members to be involved in. And officers can professionally and sometimes rightly, keep members in an informed, but in perhaps not totally informed manner because of some of the sensitivities. But as we can clearly see here, they can also use that to a negative reason as well. The issue of the development of scrutiny and children's scrutiny and our role of corporate parents, of course, has to be addressed. But what I would also like to see is a commitment that shows to our external colleagues that we are very much on the ball with this. We are 53 of us that are involved in this. And there I want a clear examination as to how we actually report this to council on a regular basis. Now this, I don't want to add duplication or complication, but all 53 of us have to be involved in this. We have to understand. And so we have to be part of that progress. And all of us as parish councillors, when we talk to our parish councillors and our representatives, have to explain that whilst it's easy to talk about potholes and planning and people get that, this is a really difficult issue, along with some of the other care issues that are involved with other adults as well. This is part of our role, and we need to be part of every step of the way of this progress. I think that will it will help not only all of us as 53, but also help to send a powerful message to the staff, to the agencies and partners that are involved as well. I hope we very much clearly, I'm not sure how we can do that, but I would like to see at every council meeting that there is a clear opportunity for us to see and keep visible and keep in a forefront of what we are doing on this progression forward, certainly till at that time as the Department of Education feels we have reached a satisfactory standard. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ginman, followed by Councillor Crockett.
Thank you, Chairman. I think Councillor Phillips has just taken my thunder or line, because that was precisely the direction that I was wishing to take this. It seems unfortunate that we've had to have the introduction today to our new CEO in the circumstances of this particular case. And I cannot believe that anybody reading the case right the way through from one end to the other cannot but feel completely let down, saddened. I think that's almost difficult to put into words. But we do have to move forward, and we have to build trust. And one of the biggest casualties at the moment is that word, trust. How do we rebuild that between council, councillors, and indeed the public who rely on us, those who've elected us into office, and our own officials? And therefore, in welcoming our new CEO, you have, sir, a very difficult path to tread. And I can only suggest, as Councillor Phillips has just done, that the need for a regular report such that we may have that trust rebuilt is something that should be very high on your list, I suspect rather long list of things to do. I'm also very mindful that there are at this time, at this very moment, members of the social work team out there working, doing the job, continuing to do the job. And we need to be able to be in a position to give them support in what they're doing. There are also the children there who must, in some cases, be very bemused by all that has happened, and certainly some of the parents who are in some ways still in contact with those children through the various legal processes, wondering what the council is doing. We do need to be in a position to reassure them all, as well as ourselves. So I think I would end quite simply on the old quotation that those who fail to learn from the mistakes of their predecessors are destined to repeat them. Please may we not repeat them. May we learn and know that we can have confidence in moving forward.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Crockett, and then I'm going to call for a 10-minute adjournment for comfort for everybody. Councillor Crockett.
Thank you, Chairman. We've all been shocked and horrified by this awful situation, and we cannot defend any of the findings as they are indefensible. I am, however, hopeful that through the proposed improvement plans, we can and we will support and safeguard the needs of the children of Herefordshire. We have heard true heartfelt feelings from members, and as mentioned by others, we have failed. We will have to improve, we will improve, and we will support these children. This directorate has had many challenges, and many times they have been challenged, but it appears, sadly, that they have not risen to these challenges, and this is why we're here today. We need to accept the challenges, move forward, and support this directorate. I feel totally betrayed by these errors that have led to this abhorrent situation. We, all 52 members, need to join together so that this never happens again. We must improve. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Norman, you have your chance now to respond to the debate. And after you've responded, we will have a 10-minute adjournment. I think we all need to move out of it.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you all for your constructive comments and contributions, and for the public questions that helped to clarify aspects of the judgment. I hope that between us we can make real progress towards an improving service, and your contributions and your thoughts and ideas, as well as your challenges, will help with that. I want to assure you that my focus is on ensuring that we make the changes needed to give us all real confidence in our children's service. Some immediate changes are being made to provide professional reassurance in the short term. We are training staff to improve awareness and understanding of the rights of the families whose children are in our care. And as you've heard, there are a number of actions being progressed that will help towards providing the confidence in our children's service that we all want to see. These will include an independent, in-depth review of children's services, to get to the root of any problems and to highlight the changes that are needed. And my intention and my hope is that we not only address the immediate issues of very real concern that we have been hearing about, but that in the longer term, we work towards providing an excellent service that we can be truly proud of. This, of course, will take time. We've had mention of 2 years, 3 years, perhaps even longer. We know it's not going to happen overnight, but we will be assisted by the support we're receiving from the Department of Education, from Ofsted, from the LGA. We also have excellent partners that we work with, the statutory partners, as well as many others. We have a new chief executive. We have a new interim director of children's services, and we have some excellent foster carers, and of course our own staff who are dedicated, hardworking and caring, already doing much good work. I have with it as a cabinet member, cabinet support, and we have a 16+ champion. These are all things that will help us to improve and to make sure that we improve as we move through the challenges that are coming our way. It's been said that we must be listening in particular to the voice of the child. And we want this not just to be a cliche, a strapline, but a reality. And I think Kath has put forward some very useful and interesting ideas as to how we can be doing that. And of course, we invite all of you as councillors to contribute in any way that's possible. We will be sharing much more with you. You all have a standing invitation anyway to come along to corporate parenting meetings, which I think and hope we will be improving in the way they run and what they aim to achieve. But you're also very welcome to come into the directorate to sit in, to visit MASH and to look at other things that are happening. And I hope you will be taking that up. The safety and well-being of children in Herefordshire is all of our concern. And it is clear, very sadly, that this family were badly let down by the council with the tragic consequences we have now become aware of. And I am very, very sorry that this happened. And especially that it happened over such a long period of time. In some respects, that makes it so much worse. What it has brought home to us, I think, in a very real way, is that when we talk about these things, it's often, sadly, easy to see things as cases, slightly abstract ideas. What this has brought home to us is that we're talking about real people, real children, real families with real feelings. And I think that is painful, but it's also, I hope, making us much more committed. So we have a job to do to rebuild trust, as a councillor has said. That's a huge job, a huge challenge, but absolutely vital. Lastly, we have these recommendations before us, which will help us to understand the failures and mistakes that have been made and to assist us in taking the steps needed to put these things right and to achieve the progress that we do want to see. And I very much hope that you will feel able to support these recommendations and help us to continue with the activities of making things much better than they have been. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Norman. I do propose now a brief adjournment. Could I have a second over that? Do you have a second? Ah, thank you very much. Therefore, can you just show your hands to in support of that? 10 minutes.
Okay, Chairman, we're now live.
Thank you. The recording is in progress now, and we're once more in session. First, I'd like to say thank you very much for your all your very interesting debate and comments. I'm sure it'll be very valuable for the future of the council. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak? Councillor Milmore, you have not yet spoken, have you? We'll start with you, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Listening this morning, there's been a catalogue of professional incompetence, lying, cover up, shameful. My question is quite simple. is there the potential for criminal culpability? And if so, will it be prosecuted?
Thank you. I think, Leader, we need to go to, I think, our legal department on that one.
Yes, I think so. They should reply. Thank you, Councillor Memore. It's a valid question, I'm sure. So Claire Ward or
Claire Ward, I think she's our
Kate Charlton in her role as monitoring officer at the moment might wish to reply.
Well, they can both have a turn, I think. Claire, start with you, then go to Kate.
The coroner's inquest is currently is open, so we will not know until the outcome of that inquest, I'm afraid.
Thank you. Kate Charlton?
Yes, I couldn't add anything more than Claire has said in relation to the inquest.
Thank you. Now, we have, I think, come to the end of the debate, but I do have two hands up. And if you've got something new and special to say, I will allow you to speak, but briefly. Councillor Kenyon, you claim to have something new and special?
Yeah, absolutely new. I don't know about special though. Having listened to the debate today, and I've been thinking pragmatic about things. And the point I was trying to make very early on in the meeting was about workloads for councillors, and that was the main point I was trying to make. Now, I think it's prior to 2010. This was a government run. You know, children's services, social services run by government. Then it came to the local authority, and it was welcomed, and money came with it. And since then, we know the history. The money's reduced to nothing, and we've been left with this baby. Now, the cabinet system, which we have in place now, I think the cabinet now more than ever are working so hard to get things done, and they have enormous amounts of paper to read and all the rest of it. So perhaps I want to sow a seed and suggest that in future we look at taking children's services and adult services out of the cabinet remit. It's totally separate to cabinet, so the people on the cabinet can make council cabinet decisions, and the people within children's services and adult social services can be separate to that, so they don't have all the other stuff that the cabinet has to do. So that's my suggestion. I'm sowing the seed, and thank you for indulging me, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm sure your words will be studied and no doubt acted upon one way or another. Thank you. Councillor Gandy, you have something new to say?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, just two things. Firstly, I think during the course of the debate, we talked about the 2018 court action. We haven't mentioned the 2019. So this is the third case since 2018. And I do want assurance that we are supporting our social workers individually with regards to this, because each time this happens, the effect on the morale of our social workers must be huge. And you know, we've taken great strides to recruit, but this will obviously cause some issues for us. The other point is the fact that some of the people referred to in the judgment, not necessarily named, but referred to in the judgment, no longer work for this authority. They are significant players in this, going back to 2012. Some of these people, one in particular, I don't know whether now, but certainly at the time I was being trained as chair of scrutiny, was being employed by the LGA to carry out the training. So I am a little bit obviously cynical about training for scrutiny, etc. Because if we are allowing people who have been massively involved in particular cases to actually continue in a profession advising members on how they should do their job, then I don't think that's very satisfactory. So I would want assurance that the people who were involved in this at a high level between 2012 and till to date, really, who no longer work through the authority, that we are making sure that they're not able to go forward and replicate this in other authorities or training members who are fairly new to scrutiny.
I think our monitoring officer might be the best person to answer that. And then perhaps a quick word from Kath, our new director, interim director.
Yes, so it is absolutely critical that proper evidence comes to the scrutiny committees, and performance evidence comes that absolutely can be challenged and is robust, and that also that all scrutiny members are trained and are trained on what that actually means and how to look for it. And I will talk with Claire Ward and also with other colleagues in democratic services in terms of getting this onto a timetable very, very soon, to support all scrutiny members, not just those within the children's scrutiny team, but across all scrutiny as well.
Thank you very much, Monitoring Officer. Do we have any other comments from any of our officers on that particular matter?
Yes, Chair, thank you. I think Councillor Gandhi raises a valid point around ensuring staff are supported. You know, they are of value, and I've heard that been said today, which is right. What I have been doing since the judgment is we've been holding staff briefings, we've been reaching out to staff. I have got a number of staff surgeries in place so that staff have a direct access to me to talk to me around any concerns. But more importantly, we have a principal social worker, which is a gentleman that has come from an already outstanding authority. He is the voice of social work in this authority. He's already got a number of meetings in place. He's reaching out to social workers, and more importantly, social workers are reaching out to them, and we are holding our social workers rightly to say we know that this is a challenging time, but this is about making sure they've got the support, the systems, the training, and the opportunity to talk if they're worried. And we've put all those in place, and we will continue to do that as this journey unravels and at times become tough. And I'm not going to dress that up because it will become tough. And so we'll make sure that we do protect those frontline staff who, as everybody said today, are out working very hard and have worked very hard in what has been a very challenging time with the pandemic and a new way of working for a lot of people up and down the country.
Thank you. I've just had a question posed by Councillor Marsh concerning some former officers who may be working in other councils, and what is their position regards us and us them, and can we make sure that they're not perhaps misbehaving elsewhere? Claire Ward, please. Acting Chief Executive.
Thank you. We'll have to consider the judgment and decide whether there is anything that we need to inform other employers about.
Thank you.
I'm sorry,
Chairman.
Claire, but I don't really think
please.
I don't will answer, because that was what was said after the 2018 judgment, because the same officers were involved in that. So I don't really see that as an acceptable answer.
But as we're not the employer, we're talking about people who are no longer employed. We'll need to consider whether we have, I don't even know whether we'll know where they're employed. So we'll need to consider that.
Thank you. I think we leave it there, please. Councillor James, have you something new to say?
Well, yes, just to correct Councillor Kenyon's history. Prior to 2010, in the early 2000s, children's services was with the council. It was merely incorporated within a social services directorate and department. That was the national policy. And following the horrendous Jambe case, where there was a public inquiry in London, a government inquiry, the then Labour government decided that they were going to separate, and all councils had to have a separate children's services directorate, and it was to be separated from social services as a whole. So it's been with the council for a very, very long time.
Thank you, Councillor James. Useful history lesson. Take note, Councillor Kenyon. We now come to the amendments, or addenda, really, I think. And one has been proposed by Councillor Phillips, Howells, sorry, Philip Howells. Councillor Howells, please introduce your proposed amendment, and your amendment will be displayed on screen as you speak.
Can't see it yet. Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I think everybody can see the proposal, I believe, so I don't need to repeat that. But obviously, I share expressions of how appalling and horrific this judgment is for the council, and I feel very much for the individuals affected. I can only apologise.
Councillor Howes, we can't see the amendment.
I will read the amendment now, just to
okay,
make sure
sorry.
you all hear it. The recommendation is, given the lack of firm recommendations for councillors to approve for the next steps from here following the family court judgment, we would like to propose that the leader commissions a firm and clear action plan with action ownership and timescales to be presented to an extraordinary meeting of the Children and Young People Scrutiny Committee to be held no later than 28th of May 2021 for discussion and to make recommendations to full council. Now, Councillor Howells?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'll start again. Yeah, of course, I share the expressions of how appalling and horrific this judgment has been for the council, and I very much feel for the individuals affected and apologise as a corporate parent that we haven't met our obligations. This proposal reflects much of the comment today and is complementary to the recommendation for an external review and the Appendix 7 20-day review and Appendix 8 review specification for a longer term review. Of course, this will all take time, but in the meantime, I think we need a more immediate term plan for development actions and commitments that we can take now. And it's also not clear how the issues discussed today are being coordinated and managed. We can obviously see a lot of work has already been clearly done into acting professionally to the judgment, but now there are several initiatives and it's getting difficult to encompass them all. And I think one leader's action plan on behalf of all councillors, as Councillor Philip has suggested, would, I think, help put everything together and be really useful. Some of the things I'd like to see that would include, for example, would be a more firm timescale for when we expect the external review to be commissioned and reported back. I think we should have a summary timeline on the presentation of the next steps from the internal review, which is scheduled for the 14th of May, but I think it should be including a reference to the Children and Young People Scrutiny Committee, which it hasn't so far, which is why we're suggesting that should be done by the 28th of May. And I think such a plan would be part of showing a greater integration of scrutiny into decision making. As we've all said today, evidence is not automatic choice by officers, and it should be. I'm reiterating, obviously, points made on scrutiny, and I totally agree with all the points Councillor Gandhi's made. And as a member, new member for 2 years, I quickly became concerned about things like the way we responded to the Ofsted report, the peer-to-peer abuse, and this judgment. There were a couple of items such as the Bromyard Children's Services Centre and Send Education locations, which were not referred automatically to scrutiny and obviously felt not to be, but we call them in. And we've had an effect on making changes and how those are now conducted. What I'd like to see now is that we ensure there is a clear commitment to more rigorous scrutiny process, which could obviously have alleviated this case. And I'm not trying to preempt the review, but I am really surprised that no mention of the scrutiny committee role has been made so far. So I would like to see a leader's action plan reflecting an increased reference to that. Now, it's been pointed out that councillors need training, and I agree, it's a very complex issue. But we have proven, even so, that we responded positively when issues have been identified that should be covered. But I see probably an even bigger problem is that officers don't see it as the automatic role and of referring it to scrutiny, and there should be education of officers, a perhaps even more important issue. And this is no criticism of any officers or care workers who obviously work very conscientiously and hard. But I think officers should be trained and educated to see this as their conscientious friend. Scrutiny would help with better decision making, clearly. We proved that, I think. It would, what's more, in a case like this, support ongoing implementation of action plans. It would act as a reminder and a sanity check for any work that should be done and isn't being done. And these are all things I think a leader's action plan could address and pull together now, including things like the corporate parenting matters, And I think it would add clarity and reassurance. It would be part of rebuilding the trust by councillors, and it would definitely point the line of direction that we are taking to ensure we don't have this situation ever happen again. So I hope that my fellow councillors will agree this is a helpful proposal and will accept it. And Chairman, if I've gone over my time, thank you for your indulgence. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Phillips, are you seconding that? You are. Thank you. Do you wish to speak now or at the end of the debate?
No, I'll speak now, Chair. Just to say, I'm happy to second that. I don't want to add an amendment to amendment, but you know what I said earlier on is to keep the high focus and profile at council meetings, and I'm sure the leader and the group leaders and the new chief executive will take that on board, and I incorporate that in the spirit of the amendment.
Thank you. Do we have any people who wish to speak? Any councillors who wish to speak on this amendment? No. I see no.
I would like to speak, but
leader, yes.
But I'd be interested to have some input, if this is possible, from Kath Knowles and also from Paul Walker, because they're the ones who are going to end up doing the work to prepare this, and the timescales and that kind of thing. So I'm just interested in their observations.
Let's go straight to them then. Kath Knowles.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's right that there should be an improvement plan, but I think that the activity and the actions and the priorities we need to take will need to be in conjunction with the new DFE advisor that is going to be chairing, because they will be, one of their roles is to ensure that our priorities are set correctly, that we're doing what we need to do, and then that then gets presented to scrutiny of this is where we're going and this is how we're doing. So I do think it does need a line. I think it links back to governance. Obviously we're still waiting for we've got confirmation that Mrs. Rose White is coming into the role. It's just the timing of when she arrives and how soon we can get that going. So I would support and endorse that we do need to share action plans and priority actions and how we're doing that, but I think that needs to be sort of rooted through and take advice from the DFE advisor, who is very, very experienced in this and is familiar with working with scrutiny and cabinet and councils. I'm not sure whether Paul wants to add any further to that.
Thank you. Chief Executive in waiting.
Thank you, Chairman. I think Kath's absolutely right. We've got some reviews which are currently being undertaken at the moment, and we're doing our 100% audit of cases as well. Those, together with the improvement plan, which we bring together with the DFE advisor, will be shared with members. And you have my commitment around that briefing with members and around sharing what the improvement plan contains and consists of, and a programme for delivery once we're in a position to share that. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Walker. We just have to say now, we've done our 3 hours. Can I have your permission to carry on? Can you show your hands that you are happy that we carry on? Thank you very much. Come to Councillor Matthews.
Yeah, just to clarify, excuse me, to clarify on the issue, Chairman, could the leader give us his views? We've heard what the new chief executive has said. Give us his views whether we should proceed with what's on the amendment or on the report, or we should consider the amendment. What's his views? Does he think it's better to proceed with what was put before us in the first place?
Well, Councillor Matthews, I think this is an addendum rather than an amendment, if I may say, as far as I can understand. But Mr. Walker, perhaps you might like to have your opinion as well, please.
I've had enough. Sorry, Chairman, did you want me to speak?
If you wish to, yes.
Yeah. I will definitely have an action plan, and it's a matter of who directs that. So Kath Knowles is saying, there will be other people coming in and saying these are the action plans. I'd written down 4 or 5 things which I thought really followed up from the debate we've had. One was that the role of scrutiny is just crucial in all this, so we need to review that and make sure it's properly used. So there's nothing in the recommendation at the moment about that. But so that's one thing which I think it's not written down, but it's something which I think is a real priority. It's about the training. It's also, there's an action plan almost behind that. I take on board Councillor Phillips' idea that at every council meeting, we should have a report. And yeah, I think that needs to be a standard item for, you know, for the next 12 months, and not the scrutiny committee, but to the council to show what we're doing and the progress and the focus. I think the third issue is about how we enhance the role of councillors and how councillors get listened to, and how we move that forward as a council. And then I think the fourth point I'd written down was about the voice of the child being so important. And those are I'm not going to suggest that we amend or the proposals. I just think those are kind of given. Those are things which we need to follow up. It doesn't matter whether it's in a resolution or not. That doesn't necessarily take us anywhere. But those are kind of my commitments at the moment, which I'll be sharing with Paul and talking about, and how we work together to improve all those areas. So yes, I welcome Howard's ideas. I'm a little bit concerned about the sort of time period, and you know, the focus being on a checklist and being driven by a particular resolution, and as Kath has said, these, you know, we've got experts coming in and telling us, and I think I'd rather we let the, you know, there wasn't yet another action plan. We have one action plan which is directed, and then that goes to the scrutiny committee. Very happy with that, but I'd rather resist the fact it's got to be done by the 28th of May. Who knows when it would be practical to do that, because, you know, you have to do the report, and then it's 5 days beforehand, it's got to be published, and before that it has to go to cabinet. And you're in, you know, it's an absolute nightmare, and their officers are running around doing things which is not about producing the right, well, it produces the right result, but they're running around doing things when they've got all sorts of other checklists. So, you know, on balance, I welcome the suggestion, but I suppose in my heart of hearts, I'm thinking, you know, I think we'll do it anyway. Do we really need this actual resolution to get it to be achieved? So, you know,
Chairman, I'm content to withdraw my seconding of the motion.
I was going to ask you that very question. In which case, Councillor Howells, do you have a seconder? A spare? I see no. Councillor James, are you indicating? You're on mute.
Sorry, Chairman. In the interest of unity, and I understand that we are to a certain extent, and you know, I don't think it's been made clear to members, we're in the hands of external bodies to a large extent. Can we just suggest, I haven't suggested this to Councillor Howes, that we take out the 28th and put in wording to the effect with urgency and as soon as is possible. I think everybody can accept that, including
Councillor Howes, would you accept that?
Yeah, I certainly would accept that. I mean, my overriding principle is that as part of the process of recommending back to council, scrutiny should be involved in an integrated part of the decision making, what the action should be. It wasn't mentioned, and the key part of this proposal is to say that scrutiny should be an integral part of whatever the final step decisions are. And that's the key point I want to get across. The date isn't as important as that particular point made.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm happy to accept that.
Councillor James, will you now be seconding?
Yes, I'll second that on the basis, and I don't see why anyone should object to that, because it gives the leeway, but also expresses the council's concern that it is treated with some urgency.
Thank you. Yes. Councillor Matthews, have you spoken yet? I think that's not. Councillor Gandy.
Yes, I've spoken. Thank you, Chair.
That's it. We have nothing more to say. Good. Councillor Gandy, and then followed by Councillor Davis and Watson.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, the reason I didn't second this, and I wasn't aware of the amendment either, the reason I didn't second it is I have absolutely sympathy with Councillor Howes regarding the fact that decisions are being made or proposed without coming forward to scrutiny. And it's in 2 occasions, both with the Hope Centre at Bromyard and the SEND strategic strategy, capital plan strategy. It was by chance that we found out about them rather than by anything else. And when we were questioned when I questioned officers, one officer actually said to me, I don't know what scrutiny is. I have no idea that it would have even, I would never have thought about it going to scrutiny. So I can see why he is concerned about it. I think my concern is the recommendations in the report I absolutely support. I would not want scrutiny to do anything that would hold up the work that is going to go forward. And I certainly wouldn't want us to duplicate anything that's going forward. Absolutely, we would want feedback. Absolutely, if we've got an opportunity to be on that board, we want to be there. And we want to be involved. There's no doubt about that. Whether scrutiny should be looking at this in parallel with the board, I don't think so. I think that will muddy the waters. But I do understand Councillor House's concerns, and we would want to be involved with this, but I don't want to in any way cause a problem for the external bodies, because I do think what's being proposed is really good. I'm really hopeful, and certainly at our meeting on the 30th of April, we will be putting something into our work programme to ensure that we are kept involved and taking up any issues that we need to. But I don't think that we want to be looking at it separately or having an action plan of our own.
Thank you. Councillor Davis, followed by Councillor Watson and Hewitt.
Yeah, Councillor Gandham, in agreement with you on that. I think there is one of the greatest risks of scrutiny is the risk of duplication, and the extra work that puts on officers that will already be very, very stretched. So that's my concern around that. The other one is just around the fact that we've got the governance review happening as well, and I think that is a really important thing that this should be feeding into, not just around particularly children's scrutiny looking at this safeguarding issue, but how can scrutiny add value in a different way that the cabinet or the improvement board aren't doing. And I think that's really key. I think that's a much better use of children's scrutiny's time. And the final one is just me being a bit cheeky. One of the things that's been lost when I lost my job in 2012 is that we had a standalone scrutiny officer, and that scrutiny officer's role was to coordinate training for every single member. It was to make sure that all of the task and finish groups were project managed, that you were looking at the right things, that there was no duplication, and that role has been lost. We've got a statutory scrutiny officer that also has to do the rest of democratic services, and it just doesn't work. And I think that we have to look at bringing back that role. We just need to find the finance for it, because this is what happens when things are cut back on. That was all.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Watson, followed by Councillor Hewitt.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to pick up on the governance issue, and Councillor Davis has actually just picked it up. My earlier comment about governance is very important, because I have to say, I am being extremely restrained and not jumping up and down, because when I read the 14 recommendations of the February 2019 Task and Finish report, I'm reading improvements to corporate parenting, having staff management oversight of high risk cases. And so therefore, I hope that when Kath Knowles does share what happened with those 14 recommendations that did have an action plan, where did it go? A new administration came in May 2019. I didn't get a debrief about, oh, you need to know about X, Y, and Z. We don't get handovers as newly elected members, and that's appalling because it affects everybody. My other thing is that, just to pick up, because I have been totally appalled, and I have been really glad to take a 5-day break from this and walk the Pembrokeshire coast, because that has provided me with some pragmatism after being so upset when I received this judgment on the day before I left. I would like to ask, what are the implications about governance? Because I sit on the Rethinking Governance Working Group, and we are looking at scrutiny structures. And so therefore, I would like to ask either Claire Ward or the monitoring officer, what are the implications for the government's arrangements that might be brought in by the external authorities? Thank you.
Thank you. I think Claire Ward will start with you as you're the acting chief executive.
Thank you. What's proposed at the moment is an improvement board that is being supported by the DFE. That doesn't change our governance arrangements. What there'll be is dotted lines between scrutiny and the Cabinet, as I explained to Councillor Balderson's question. If the government takes further steps on intervention, that is when we can have directions and commissioners into the council, which could remove actually children's services from our responsibilities.
Interesting, thank you. Councillor Hewitt, followed by Councillor Simons and Harvey. That's the last one I have.
So we could all hear the emotion in Councillor Watson's voice, and I know that even if we can't all get that emotion into our voices, many people in the room feel it. But what I really, really feel about this is how much more so the public, when they're trying to actually get their voice heard. They elect members in order to get their voice heard, and the voice has been squashed in so many instances. And it's really to try and say to the members of the public out there that I will do my utmost to make sure that not only, as the leader says, our councillors' voices heard, but that their voices are not squashed through the process of editing when it comes to questions from the public to the council. It's really important.
Thank you. Councillor Simons and Councillor Harvey following.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, a very quick point. I think I've absolutely no doubt of the leader's sincerity and all the things he listed that are implied about the conversation today. And obviously we've got the new chief exec and acting director, both of them are clearly very capable and committed. But for me, I just don't think we can afford at this point in the game to have things that are implicit. For me, this is about, there are a lot of different strands running here, and this is about having one clear, consistent, overarching plan that tells us exactly what's happening, when it's happening, and who's leading it. So for me, that's the crux of this, to just help us all understand how we're planning to tackle this. Because for me, that's the issue, is there are so many parallel strands running. It would give us an overview. Thank you.
Thank you. The leader does have the right to reply at the end of the debate. And we have Councillor Harvey now, followed by Councillor Chance.
Yes, thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Howells, for suggesting this amendment. For me, what I'm concerned about is that what we put in place and the decisions that we make here as part of taking collective responsibility for what happens now and next is that we don't slow things down. And I'm just not clear from the way that you've worded your amendment whether you're expecting things to go from scrutiny to approval at full council before stuff happens. Now, I think it's really important that full council maintains oversight of this, and I support the comments just made by Councillor Simons on that. But maybe the way to do it is to have report come to full council identifying what the progress is that's being made. We've got full council dates that are set for the next few meetings at least, to the point where we've got a clear plan that that we can be informed about or can go through scrutiny. But could you clarify whether you're intending that your amendment will require that whatever comes forward goes through scrutiny and to full council before it's implemented? Because we may need to have extraordinary council meetings or something else in order to make that happen.
Thank you. Councillor Howells, quick reply.
Yeah, and that's obviously a good question. Thank you, Councillor Harvey, for asking it. And my view is, and the reason for suggesting that date is that I think given all the questions that are being asked, for at least scrutiny to have seen what the next step suggestions are before it comes to council for approval of what those recommendations are, would be very useful, because it would add extra reassurance that scrutiny at least had a chance to comment. And if that were happen within a couple of weeks after the next steps, and before it's likely that we could call a council meeting, I would not see this holding things up. I just think it would add extra reassurance to any recommendation to council that scrutiny had a chance to at least have an overview look at it and made their thoughts known as well.
Thank you. Councillor Chance.
Thank you. Procedurally, I'm not sure exactly whether this is possible, but I was going to suggest an amendment to the text proposed by Councillor Howells that I think would simplify.
I don't think you can have an amendment to an amendment. Not on. Unless it's a very minor form of words, which he's happy to accept as the full amendment.
Okay. I was going to suggest quite a simplification, really, to emphasise the point about the involvement in Children and Young People's Scrutiny Committee in the entire process of the work of the Improvement Board. But that, that's not a minor amendment, really, because
it's a major piece. I think perhaps that might come later.
It's an alternative, I suppose, because I fear, as many people have said here, that the text proposed by Councillor Howells actually starts by, I would say, slightly misrepresenting the nature of the recommendations that we have got, but B, puts in train a process that could potentially be duplicatory and delaying. And I think we're all agreed we want 100% focus on the work of the Improvement Board. That is how the council is going to deal with this. And I think we're all agreed that we want 100% engagement and involvement of Children and Young People's Scrutiny. So we need to make sure that the board and scrutiny are connected. And my understanding is that is what Councillor Howells is fundamentally trying to propose. I support that, but I struggle, to be honest, with the wording that he's proposed, which I think risks being unhelpful, unfortunately.
Ms. Knowles.
Yes, thank you. Perhaps maybe I could bring some reassurance. My experience on improvement boards is we always have the chair of scrutiny on the board, on the improvement board. So the chair of the scrutiny will sit on the board along with the lead member for children's, and usually the shadow lead member sits on the board. So we usually have those three critical posts sat on a board. Certainly the last board I was responsible for, the chair of scrutiny sat on it, and I would anticipate that Ms Rhodes-White will also be supportive of the chair of scrutiny, Councillor Gandy, to sit on the improvement board, and I think that might just help bring the reassurance that she, as the chair, will be sat at the heart of the improvement journey. So just wanted to bring that reassurance that would be my expectation.
Thank you. So Councillor Howell's amendment meets your approval as well.
Sorry,
Councillor Howell's amendment would meet with your approval.
To take something.
It's an addendum rather than a change to anything. It's an addendum.
Yeah, so to be able to at some point make sure we bring something to scrutiny, but not within the time frame. I think we really need we need Gladys Rhodes to be able to come in and set that scene, set the board, set the terms of reference, set the priorities, and because the board membership will have the scrutiny, that opportunity to ensure that that's where we want to go. But I think the time frame of 28th of May might be a challenge, is what
Well, I think
you
we've
know.
said that that's going to be taken out.
Yeah.
And Councillor James's suggestion has been accepted by Councillor Howells.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Leader, you have a right of reply to the debate.
Sorry, are we able to see the final proposed wording?
Yes. Can we have that up? Just hold on a moment. Democratic Services are going to put it up on the screen. Given the lack of firm recommendations for councillors to approve for the next steps from here following the family court judgment, we would like to propose that the leader commissions a firm and clear action plan with action ownership and timescales to be presented to an extraordinary meeting of the Children and Young People Scrutiny Committee to be held with urgency for discussion and to make recommendations to full council. And Leader?
Yeah, well, I think I can certainly live with that. We're talking about an action plan, which we will need anyway. So that's a good prompt to do that. Timescales, and it'll be done with urgency. And I've already, I think I agree with Councillor Phillips' idea that this sort of thing goes to full council. So yes, and I think I'm encouraged by the fact that the chair of the Children and Young People Scrutiny Committee is going to be on the improvement board. It strikes me that everything is actually working together towards this end, but this will kind of formalise it in a way to take on board Councillor Simon's views that it is always helpful to have something in writing. So yes, I would support this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leader. And I think we now come to the vote. Do we have speakers? We've actually closed the debate really, but Councillor Johnson, if we will indulge you with a brief word or two. You are muted. You are still muted. You are still muted. You are muted, Councillor Johnson. That's better.
I beg your pardon, Chairman. I'm struggling with technology as usual.
Don't we all?
The conversation of the last 5-6 minutes, I suspect may have given rise to some confusion in the mind of members. The original proposal for this meeting, I believe, contained all of the things that we needed to do. It may very well be because we have third party coming to us in the shape of DFE and government, etc., we don't know yet and can't anticipate what their requirements might be and what changes, therefore, there might be to any ideas we have at the moment. I would have thought it would have been much more sensible to stick with the original proposal rather than the amendment. I understand what's implied by Councillor Howells, but it seems to me we'd be better off sticking with the original amendment, waiting until we see what the third party requirements are, if any, and what changes they might bring about, except that the inclusion of scrutiny committee on the improvement board largely provides what Councillor Howells was looking for, I think, and make such changes as may seem necessary at the next full council meeting in the light of experience. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I think we have now come to the end of the debate, and we'll now go to the vote on the amendment. Democratic Services are displaying the proposed amendment at the moment, and confirm the voting number, please. and that all members are available and ready to vote.
Chairman, we've since received apologies from Councillor Selden, Councillor Stone and Councillor Toynbee. We therefore have 47 voting members.
Thank you. The voting options are for, against and abstain, and they've been added to your electronic voting system. The options are now on the screen, and if you are unable to see the voting options, please access the poll icon at the bottom of your screen. So please can members vote for, against or abstain?
Chairman, there's it won't let me submit the vote. It'll let me put it on there, but it won't let me submit.
Likewise.
Likewise.
May I relaunch the poll, Chairman?
Yes,
I clicked a different button
Likewise.
and then clicked it back and then it worked. So if you click another one and then click back to the original one.
We're going to relaunch the poll and see if that works now.
Okay, the poll has been relaunched if members want to vote.
Please cast your vote and ensure you press submit after selecting the option for which you are voting. Are all the votes in? Then
All
can the
votes are in,
monitoring
Chairman.
officer declare the results, please? 66% for, 34% against. Therefore, I declare that the amendment is carried. Thank you. And now we come to the second amendment. The proposer is Councillor Simons. And can we have it up on the screen, please? I'll read it out. That all staff resigning from Herefordshire Children's Services are required to undertake an exit interview conducted by a children's social care specialist outside Herefordshire Council to understand the reasons for their resignation. This process to be implemented no later than the 1st of July 2021, with the outcome of all such exit interviews reported to the Children and Young People's Scrutiny Committee. This could be a standalone arrangement with an external consultant or a reciprocal arrangement with another authority. Councillor Simons, you have 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Obviously, like everyone, I'm appalled and astounded at the sort of arrogance and incompetence that's led to the betrayal of the family involved and the foster carers and obviously the other professionals who've been whose reputations have been impugned or ignored. This really focuses on what's quite a small element of the situation. In paragraph 74 to 76 of the report, it describes how one of the social workers was instructed or coerced into writing a report that she didn't feel was appropriate and subsequently resigned. I mean, I guess it's speculation as to whether that's the reason for resigning, but the issue for me here is that, you know, I have every confidence in the action plan and the recommendations before us. We've got very capable new people coming in, but this, in a sense, is, if you like, an insurance policy, because there are lots of things that will have to change. We've talked about culture change, and we all know that takes a very long time. But this is a fairly simple, straightforward safety net, which I think would offer us some reassurance. It's not about doing too little too late and waiting till somebody resigns to find out what concerns are, because there'll be all the other things that are in the report today already happening. But in case any of that fails, this is just a simple safety net that might help us you know, raise alarm if necessary. That's all I want to say, really. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Do you have a seconder?
Yes, Chairman.
Then do you wish to speak now or at the end of the debate?
Yeah, I'll just say a brief word, and I think we need to be fairly brief. I am deeply concerned about the exit interviews, I met someone who'd left the service of the Council and Children's Services 2 years ago, and they were explaining at some length what was wrong with the department and how unhappy they'd been there. And I said, did you make that known at your exit interview? I said, no. She said, no. She said, I might want to come back and work in under a different regime or different council. Again, and she openly admitted that she felt frightened almost to actually say the truth as to why she actually left, because it's a small world, the children's services area, and she was frightened actually to actually say what she really thought, because she had a job and she had a living to make. And I do think that somehow, whistleblowers get a bad time very often. So no one benefits by being a whistleblower, and people who tell the truth very often are the people who get the worst out of these situations. Their careers are destroyed, and we need some way in which to give those ex-staff the opportunity to tell us what's going wrong with the council and the children's department. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Do we have any speakers on this particular amendment? No speakers. Then we come to the leader, who has the right of reply to each amendment.
Yes, again, this is partly a management issue. I'd be interested to know, again, if I may ask Kath Knowles what's her view of this, whether she's experienced anything like this in other authorities, whether there are any negatives as a result of doing this, Kath?
Thank you. Kath Knowles, can you?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I totally agree that we should have independent in terms of exit interviews. I have put in place already the principal social worker to start doing some any exit interviews, so that we have that independent voice. He sits outside, but I can see what the rationale of the amendment and the request. I suppose I'd have to defer to corporate colleagues on how the practicalities of that, or even our incoming chief exec, whether it could be outsourced. I think it has. I have seen it work both ways, where it's been your principal social worker that's captured that within children's, or somebody from another department captures it. So not necessarily somebody in children's, but say somebody in adults capture those reviews. So there's different models that you can apply, but it is a healthy model to have an independent person do the exit interviews and capture the voice, and that then gets reported in. So I would support the principle of that, but I think there's different ways that you can do it. So other departments, principal social worker, this is different models that you could do it. That's what I would say.
Thank you.
Maybe Paul Walker. Paul, do you have a particular?
One more speaker. We have one speaker, Councillor Hewitt.
I think it's a really good idea. I think people need to be heard about how their professional life has been conducted. And I would really, really encourage that it's an external person, an independent person, because we have heard from many councillors in the room how we're trying to address a culture of, I'll look after you, you look after me, we'll make sure our jobs are safe. And that's probably a bit of a crude way of putting it, but I would encourage it to be an external person. I think it's an excellent idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Leader, your right of reply now to the whole debate.
I think Councillor Davis has her hands up.
Oh, sorry, I missed that.
Apologies.
Yes, your hand is very pale.
Is it? Well, I've got the updated one that isn't a yellow alien hand, so mine's the new one. So it was just one. Yeah, absolutely, Councillor Simons. I absolutely think no organisation can ask enough questions of their staff about what it's like. And I've seen where exit surveys don't work. And what I would like, we can't add it to the amendment, but I want it to be as an assurance that it won't be via an app, because health and social care staff are done with apps. They want face-to-face conversations where you can read body language, where you can speak to a real person. So it's just that plea, because I know the cheapest option would be to do it via an automated pulse survey. That isn't what we're talking about. And I'm sure that's not what Councillor Simons was asking for either.
I'm sure you're right. I think we're all looking forward to face-to-face and body language understanding and all that. Thank you. Councillor Tyler.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I welcome this amendment for exit reviews. I think it's really important that when somebody does leave the authority, they can sort of highlight why they are leaving. But I wish it's not just for when they exit. I really want officers to be able to feel they can approach management and talk and be listened to and address any issues that may be troubling them. So they have that opportunity, and hopefully that will stop officers and social workers leaving the authority. Because if you can't speak up without worrying that you may lose your job or other matters, I think that is we're letting them down. So I would want something in place as they move along in this transformational change. So we don't have to worry about exit reviews, because we won't be losing staff as much as what we are. So, but I do agree with the exit review anyway. Thank you.
Thank you. And I can see no other hands up. Well, Leader, now is your chance.
Yeah, I was just reflecting a little bit. So this report, this interview will be for the purpose of management. So this is for the benefit of the officers rather than for the benefit of the scrutiny committee. So the process is, this is done, officers look at it, make an evaluation, make changes, and then report to the scrutiny committee on the changes and that kind of thing. So we're not interfering in the management of the council. Councillor Simons is nodding his head, so I guess the amendment deals with that. So Chairman, you want me to address the whole report now, or do we?
Well, we've got to do this amendment first.
Okay, fine.
Then we come back to the full report.
Thank you.
Right. If we've got no more comments, we'll go to the vote. Moving to the vote on the amendment.
Oh, sorry. Do I normally get a final comment?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I do apologise.
That's okay. Yeah,
sorry. It's an amendment. No, you don't. Sorry.
Okay, fair enough.
Moving to the vote on the amendment, please can Democratic Services display the proposed amendment and then confirm the voting number and that all members are available and able to vote. Oh, yes, here it is. I'll read it out. That all staff resigning from Herefordshire Children's Services are required to undertake an exit interview conducted by a children's social care specialist outside Herefordshire Council to understand the reasons for their resignation. This process to be implemented no later than the 1st of July 2021, with the outcome of all such exit interviews reported to Children and Young People Scrutiny Committee. This could be a standalone arrangement with an external consultant or a reciprocal arrangement with another authority. The voting options will now be displayed. For, against, and abstain have been added to the electronic voting system. The options are now on screen, or yes, they are there. If you are unable to see the voting options, please access the poll icon at the bottom of your screen. So please can members vote for, against, or abstain?
Chairman, just for the record, the voting number is 45. Great Councillor Graham Andrews has sent his apologies, and we also lost Councillor Bolter.
Thank you. So can you please cast your vote and ensure you press submit after selecting the option for which you are voting.
All votes are in, Chairman.
Thank you. Can the monitoring officer declare the results? Well, the results I can see are for, 98%, abstain 2%. That amendment is carried. Thank you. And then now can we come back to the full proposal for from the report, the substantive recommendations which will be before you now. A, note the contents of this report. B, note the judgment set out in Appendix 1 of this report. C, note the assurance and improvement strategy set out in Appendix 2. D, agree the establishment of an improvement board. And E, approve the appointment of an independent chair for the Children and Families Improvement Board. F, note the Secretary of State will approve the appointment of a DFE advisor to act as the independent chair of the Children and Families Improvement Board. G, approve the commission of external reviews as determined necessary by the head of paid service. And H, approve the financial provision to support the review and improvement strategy as set out in para 24 and Appendix 3 of this report. And I, given the lack of firm recommendations for councillors to approve for the next steps from here, following the family court judgment, we would like to propose that the leader commissions a firm and clear action plan with action ownership and timescales to be presented to an extraordinary meeting of the Children and Young People's Scrutiny Committee to be held with urgency for discussion and to make a recommendations to go to full council. J, that all staff resigning from Herefordshire Children's Services are required to undertake an exit interview conducted by a children's social care specialist outside Herefordshire Council to understand the reasons for their resignation. This process to be implemented no later than the 1st of July, with the outcome of all such exit interviews reported to the Children and Young People's Scrutiny Committee. This could be a standalone arrangement with an external consultant or a reciprocal arrangement with another authority. Those are the recommendations. Yes, you shall get that now. Leader, it's your turn now for right of reply.
Well, I obviously warmly recommend to you all these recommendations. I do think this is a watershed moment for the council. It's a real opportunity to make a difference. I've heard a lot about the importance we all place on representing the people of Herefordshire and really reinforcing the relationships between officers and members and the public. And that's not specifically in this recommendation, but it's certainly something that I will take away and we'll be working with the new Chief Executive to achieve. It's an enormous disappointment that we've let down this family. I mean, there aren't words which are enough to express our concern, the number of lives that have been affected. It just amazes me that something which happens to children, people early in their lives, it has an impact on the whole of their lives and on society, on all the things they achieve in life and do. So it is so important that we get this first step in life right, and we are determined to do that for the benefit of the people of Herefordshire. So I do commend this report to you, and I'm sure it will get the unanimous vote of council. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. The recommendations are displayed and have been read out. And now the recommendations will be voted on en bloc. Please can Democratic Services confirm the voting number?
Chairman, Councillor Watson has sent her apologies, therefore the voting number is 44.
Thank you. I've had no requirements for any other type of voting. So please can councillors cast their vote for, against, or abstain, and remember to press the submit button as well. Are all the votes in?
Just waiting on the one vote, Chairman.
That's fine.
All votes are in, Chairman.
All votes in. And can we have the monitoring officer declare the results? And can I remind members again that under our new procedures, the results of the vote will be published on the council's website after the meeting and also as an appendix to the minutes of the meeting. And the result is 100% in favour of the recommendations. So the recommendations are carried en bloc. Thank you. I think that's this has been a long day, and I think a very important turning point for the council. And I'd like to thank members of the public and councillors for their attendance at today's meeting. The next meeting of the council is the annual meeting at 10:30 a.m. on the 21st of May 2021. Time is now 13:51 and the meeting is now closed. And can I check with Democratic Services team that the live stream has been switched off and we are no longer